I don't know why it would be cool to wear a hoodie underneath a headset.
It's comfortable.
I've learned not to ask these questions.
It's
I just see certain things and I just go, not enough time of the day for that, is there? So. Right, this is episode 54 of Listen Loco, in which Loco again attempts to naively show off his attempts at Western fashion, this time wearing some sort of a low-cost hoodie, perhaps from the Gap or Banana Republic, and he's got a camo design on there. Anti-social. I know to you that's very meaningful and something cool, but like that's not in any way anything I recognise or know anything about. So then again, I don't stream, so I'm not in your world, am I, Loco? I'm in that esports world. You know, if you had like a jersey on right now of like fucking Rogue Warriors or something, I'd say respect. Okay, you know a little bit about this game. Fortunately, all you can do is just, I bet you've got a whole fucking closet with all your TSM jerseys still in it, and you daren't take them out, do you? Because as soon as you touch them, the old memories come back. You start thinking, oh fuck, could still be someone. Well, you're wrong. You can't. You're in the content world now, so forget all those dreams. Forget all those dreams. You had your chance at MSI. You chose Cho'Gath. You chose to die on the Cho'Gath Hill against players that weren't even good.
I had Dyrus against Tuni. How do you blame me?
Easy. Should have been fucking easy. Why don't you just go and watch that show?
He was saying it was going to be easy going into it. So
all you need to know is this, Loco. This is going to be the end of the 2015 segment of this show. But I'm going to tell you something I've never told you before. And I didn't tell you before because you know what? It's important on shows like this. I learned this a while ago. It's important to encourage everyone. Otherwise, there's a lot of people out there will just collapse from their own insecurities. So here's the thing I never told you, Loco, that I should have told you many years ago. You remember one of the times that your team lost in the championship was against CLG in summer of 2015, right? Yeah. And you know, at the time, even though that was like a convincing victory for CLG, you still made the final, you still made top two, you know, you went to Worlds and naively believed you had a chance. And remember, for you, the key moment that ruined everything was that group draw. Do you remember? Mm-hmm. It was that group draw. That was what messed everything up. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you right now. That's going to blow your mind. But if you think about it, it might explain everything about your coaching career, right? You shouldn't even have been in that final. Like, do you remember that playoffs? That was the one where Dyrus beat Team Liquid by doing all the, like, yeah, I think he played Tip first and then Team Liquid and then you played CLG in the final, right?
Yeah, I mean.
And Dyrus was actually having carry games in this playoffs. I'm not joking, guys. Go watch. He had like an Olaf game. Mm-hmm. He just straight carried. So Dyrus in 2015 could carry against playoff level competition. Team Liquid was the number one ranked team in the league. He could carry against teams like this in 2015. So I don't even blame Loco for all the shit that happened at all the international competitions. He had no tools to work with. He just didn't know he was in the fucking kiddie end of the pool. And therefore the kid who was like, I can stay up all the time treading water, he was just standing. He was in the kiddie end of the pool. So that's all I'm going to tell you right there, Loco. Basically, just every time you say you're a champion, I want you under your breath to say, assist to Bjergsen. Because that's all that it was. So anyway, that's the end of that segment. I had to get myself out of my funk I was in today. I wasn't feeling it today. Didn't have any energy going, you know. So anyway, we're here now. There's a bunch of irrelevant shit that had nothing to do with this tournament, but was legit flame towards Loco. So editor, keep all that in. You know the way this goes. Maybe put a funny sound effect on me saying that, like, yikes. And then do that, because that's all your fucking job is. So you're the Loco of editing. Do your job. I'm the Bjergsen of the show. I carry the show. And we've got a guest here. So our guest for section 1 of the Mega episode, Concept Loco literally stole from all my shows. But okay, whatever.
It's guess both our shows. It's whatever. How is it stealing? Oh my God.
One day you'll make me some sponsorship money and I'll actually be able to respect you as a business partner as well as...
We have gotten sponsorships before and you make it hard.
It's true.
Also, what is it? You didn't invent having a Mega episode and having multiple guests on.
I definitely did. I did. Okay, just name me the show that you saw in esports that had it before me.
But I borrow from not
just... No, I just asked you to name it. All I asked was a question. You couldn't even answer the question. So anyway, that's out the window. There's no one did it before me. I invented it. I basically invented having talk shows. Because before me, talk shows used to be a bunch of people like, I sure like this team. Yes, they're awfully good. I think they'll probably slightly win. I came with real shit. I was like, let's What happens when a real human comes among these bots?
Don't-
My God, he's tearing them all up. So anyway, I
Those
made you
shows
all
still
get
go
to this
on.
level.
State of the League
Yeah.
involved the Hotline League. Those
Yes.
shows still go on.
I know, it's a brilliant show, isn't it? It's a brilliant show. Then again, in a way, here's the thing. I'll give credit to Hotline League. It's a genius concept. If you've got a bunch of people who have no ideas of their own and nothing to say, don't have them be the centre of the show. Have fucking randoms call in. Randoms are full of shite and all sorts of opinions, but fair play. At least they have opinions, right? I respect people who have opinions that are bold, or at least give them out, right? That's the reason why idiots will never understand. Anyone who thinks I actually agree with all of Ellis's opinions hasn't been keeping track. It's not that. It's that I don't want him to stop giving the fucking opinions because they're all hella interesting. What was I saying interesting? I didn't say right. I didn't say accurate. I didn't even say responsible, but they're interesting, aren't they? Like, you're telling me if you heard, bet you want to hear what he says next about this stuff. Of course you fucking do. In fact, if anything, if you'd have been smart, he'd be the last guest on this show. Probably turned you down if I had to guess.
No,
But
I didn't even. Oh my
rejection,
God.
That's
I
a
didn't
forte
even-
of
I
yours,
didn't even
Loco. So
ask
anyway, let's go on. You couldn't get him, so you got like the fourth best LCK.
I've been wanting
caster,
to
but
mean
whatever,
to
you
get
got him
Atlas.
anyway.
Why do you shit on the guests before we even bring them on? Oh my God.
I'm just setting the bar high. Listen, Atlas, I'm not coming in super hyped for this one, so you gotta give me that A game. You know, make me believe that you're not in Korea right now just because about 7 people decided to no longer cast in Korea.
Dude.
Make me believe that, like I want to believe that actually SK Telecom's a good team that's done. So anyway, our guest before you rudely interrupted me on the Mega episode is Kelsey Moser, who is the coach. Are you actually still the coach of 100 Thieves? Is that like was the deal for more than 1 year?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so she's the coach of the academy team still, apparently. And I think they made it to the quarterfinals, did they?
Yeah, we did.
There we go. Quarterfinals, not bad.
Oh, that's
Now,
not bad at all,
Loco
Kelsey.
is always,
Quarterfinals
you know,
for Academy? That's not bad
He's
at all for a
always
first
trying to
timer.
flex academy and be like, NA needs to develop talent and all the rest of it. But then he's also the sort of person who spent the first 3 episodes of fucking this LCS like, DeMonte's very good, isn't he? Oh, that Froggen guy, he's not even good. And then after episode 3, every episode was like, do you think that DeMonte will ever get a team where they give him a chance to be good? Nah, it's fucking bullshit, isn't it? Curse you. So anyway, she actually knows about NA talent.
No. Kelsey,
knows about
quarterfinals for first time at Academy is really good.
Not
I
bad.
mean, I was a 2-time champion in Challenger, but first for Kelsey, first time quarterfinals.
You know,
not
I could
bad.
only one day hope to measure up to Loco. And I did this talk show before, so you're actually kind of like retreading my roots. So maybe next time you get into coaching, you too can aspire to quarterfinals in academy.
Wait a
One
minute.
day.
You won Challenger twice.
Yeah.
All right, how many
Yeah,
times
you
did
did.
Kelsey yes? Man, sorry, I thought that was the obvious follow-up. I mean, you won the Challenger, right? What happened next? What's the next chapter of the story? Your attempts to go to fucking the NLCS, mate, were like Daenerys Targaryen just going, I think I'll just pop up north with these dragons. I've already spent the whole fucking season building up how powerful 3 dragons are. I can take over the whole world. But, I've lost another one, down to 1. That entire show would last like 3 episodes if Tywin Lannister got 1 dragon at any point in the entire thing. This isn't even about Game of Thrones, but that's a side point. That Loco triggered me because his battle tactics are up there with that Battle of fucking Winterfell.
And now we know that NA learns League of Legends from Game of Thrones because the entire strategy is just getting dragons. So there you go.
Fucking Team Liquid showed up with the ice dragon that they never had before. They borrowed an ice dragon from the TSM Kingdom. I was like, what the fuck? You guys didn't have ice dragons before. And they fucking wrecked us.
Suddenly that Ice Dragon got way more powerful, because I remember back when that Ice Dragon was on TSM, you thought the guy in the mid lane just playing like fucking mages and hiding behind his tower was like the best player on the team, but bizarrely, he doesn't even have the most championships anymore. Weird how life works out, isn't it? You're here on a talk show, just waiting for me to say interesting shit. I'm waiting for you to stop talking, and now we're going to ask Kelsey some questions. So Kelsey, let's start this off, right? Are you still super deep into Chinese League of Legends? Like, have you watched a lot of the LPL this season?
Yeah, I still watch a lot of LPL.
So are you coming in with IG as the favourite? Because I noticed that it's pretty split, actually. Like, there's IG, I think, overall has the biggest contingency of people saying they're going to win. G2 actually has a surprising amount, even if some of them are from Europe. And then SK Telecom, I think, hovers between the two a little bit. So is IG the favourite for you for this tournament?
IG actually frustrates me so much because I feel like if this were just about how well or how correctly you play League of Legends, IG would not be good. I've shot on IG a lot historically, like even last Worlds. But what they did at Worlds was really impressive because they never really kind of judged how to beat other teams correctly before. They just kind of came in and was like win game, win lane, win game, and do all that shit. I think now, the thing that IG does really well is they correctly assess like early game win conditions of their composition and enemy composition like way better than anyone else, right? So they would come in and it would be like, okay, they're the ones who can see that Hitler will become like the dictator at the very, very beginning, and they kill him as a baby. Whereas like G2, who are probably the next ones, like they kill him when he's applying to art school. Like it's like that's kind of the difference if you're following me here, like in terms of early game win condition assessment. So that's how good they are at shutting down enemy team strategies.
Jesus Christ, I think, Kelsie.
But I think that's kind of like where I see them. But everything else they do is really, really questionable. Like their ability to assess like when they should take fights, translating when they should move their vision line up. They have kind of a very different approach to setting up 1-3-1 compositions than any other team at the game, and I haven't quite decided at the tournament, and I haven't quite decided if I prefer their style to the rest of the teams, because I think it's riskier, like inherently risky, and it relies on basically the Shy or Rookie being so far ahead of the enemy laners that they can like 1v3 basically. So I think that's basically going to be their condition in terms of winning the tournament. Do I think they can do that? Yes. I think they can. I think they can still win, but I wouldn't actually call them my favorites for the tournament. So
okay, right. Let's dig into that a little bit then, because when you say like they don't play, like if it was about playing League of Legends correctly, so I'm assuming by that logic, SK Telecom would be the traditional favorite in that context, right? So what about IG is actually exploitable by any of the other teams in that context? Like in this meta, can you do anything? Because they still look like they win every game I see pretty much.
I actually wouldn't put SKT as like the most correctly playing League of Legends team either, so, of any of the groups. I actually think G2 are the smartest team at MSI. There you go, full stop.
Oof.
So I think that like if it were about that, that's where it would be. But I'm not sure, because I think what I really, really rate IG is their 2v2 topside. I think that teams in the LPL, the approach that they took to beat them was to try to exploit their bottom lane. I think that's wrong, and I think it's not going to work, especially with the types of top laners that you can pick, like Ryze, Gangplank, Vlad. Like all of these top laners can't really get exploited enough. If those types of top laners like will just take over the game if you leave them alone. So if you're trying to exploit IG's bot lane, then you're probably just going to lose topside 2v2 anyway, like too hard relative to this, especially if you're like a Team Liquid or something like this that over prioritizes Dragon. Like you're not going to have any turrets topside for the rest of the tournament. So that's kind of that. I think that teams that can really shut down IG are going to be the teams that can kind of match them on the top side 2v2, or who can control mid lane enough that it becomes like a 3v2 top side as opposed to a 2v2 top side. I think that it is possible for SKT to do that, like controlling through mid, but I think that the way that they set up around top side is not as good. Like they don't really stack up the minion waves to dive top or things like that well. Like their reactive plays are a little bit better. Khan is like the worst flanking top laner of the 4 teams at the tournament. Like when he TP flanks in, like even Impact is going to do that way better, right? So I think that's like, for me, like SKT have a really questionable like topside 2v2. I would say maybe even TL have better topside 2v2 than SKT, but like they're going to be worse than SKT in almost every other metric. So yeah.
Okay. Right. Note to you, Loco. This is something to learn for this type of episode that you are not aware of because you haven't done one before, which is, especially for a tournament like this where there's basically not many teams to talk about, we can't, with every guest, give like our full opinions on every matchup and every team. So it's better generally to tailor them to the guest. That's why I'm starting out with IG here on Kelsie, and then ideally we'll do all the teams versus IG, that type of a matchup. If you want to go specific players, do that in this relevance. So since you brought up top lane already, right, Loco, give us some of your thoughts. What do you think of the Shy?
I think Shy is so incredibly good, but also so incredibly arrogant. I haven't seen a player this arrogant and this good. Some like IG players, a lot of them.
Arrogance can be deserved though.
it can be deserved, but arrogance is usually like a downfall of people. And
yeah, but that's basically what I'm trying to get out of you, Loco, is when you say he is arrogant, that literally implies that you think that he thinks he is better than he is, and presumably this downfall there would be you overestimate, you overreach, you overdoubt, whatever it might be, right? So you actually think he thinks he's like better than he is? I mean, most people would say
I think he'd be
best top player in the world.
I think he'd be even better if he used more brain and less fingers. He would be even better than he is right now. Like some of the counter picks he does and some of the plays he goes for, like a player of his caliber, I feel like should know, like, I'm not supposed to do this. I shouldn't be doing this. Like he'll pick Vladimir into Jace and somehow he'll come out ahead in CS. And even sometimes with less jungle pressure, he'll be able to solo kill the Jace in lane, like before jungle even gets there. Like this guy is so fucking crazy good, and I can't believe he would take like the weaker early game matchup and just win like outright. So some of the things he does is crazy, and some of the fights he forces onto top lane often gets them in trouble. I think the worst part of IG is when they force fights when it doesn't need to be, when they don't need to be forcing fights. Like that's where they fall behind the most. People say like you should match them like fist to fist, like you should go head on with them to beat them, but a lot of times when you go head on with them to beat them and they have their heads screwed tight, it's never a coin flip. They're always the ones coming out ahead. The only time they come out behind when you match them strength for strength, or like you try to match them top lane, is when they blatantly disrespect the opponent and the Shy plays way up when Ning isn't close enough and dies, or Ning is invading without priority. So I feel like they beat themselves a lot, but it's really hard to beat them straight up.
Okay. Anything in that was interesting, Kelsie?
I got really frustrated by both the semifinal and the final because I feel like both of those teams are teams that IG played against are teams that have historically kind of played through topside 2v2 and they just kind of like chickened out. And the only game of those games where they lost were the one where like TOP actually did play like with Urgot jungle and Kennen versus like the Shy and managed to take over topside or challenge topside through that regard. So I think, I don't know, I guess it just goes like really bad for them in scrims when they try to play to match them 2v2 topside. But that's like the only time I've seen teams actually be consistently lucky. And I think one of the big, or not lucky, but successful. And I think the big thing is just like the mid lane. Because if you have control through mid or you're doing some kind of swap and you're involving support and you want to do something on top side, it will go wrong if your mid lane isn't pushed out and you don't have a mid lane prio and the rookie can just join or turn the situation. Or if your mid laner is pushed out, then like the Shy has to be gets more punished for playing up than he otherwise would because your mid laner will join first, right? So I think that that's going to be a really big thing that's a little bit underrated in terms of like the best teams at playing around topside. It eventually becomes like not a 2v2. It's not even a 3v3. It's also almost a 4v4 because support will come or AD will come. Like all this type of thing. And then getting that first Rift Herald is something that IG cares about. Like IG doesn't care about Dragon. Like they think unless it's an ocean or something, it's not going to be useful until the game's probably in their mind. Like if we played our game correctly, then fuck Infernal, right? So I think that's kind of, but they really care about Rift Herald because they want to take the two top turrets before 20 minutes, before plating falls, before everything else, and then the Shy is just so far ahead so that when they set up their 1-3-1, like he's the one getting pressured through side. Even when no one else is showing on the map, they all have to answer him, and then the rest of IG can move up and get vision around Baron and take over the game like this, and then he just 1v3s when they all try to dogpile him. And this is like kind of what they have to do. And they think that that's like winning the game. So I think for me, I don't know. I think it's like, it's going to be about how you answer it. And you can't just think of it as a 2v2. If you think of it as a 2v2, then yeah, you'll probably lose. But if you set up the game to match them topside, then you can punish the Shy or his arrogance, as Locodoco will say.
Okay. Kelsie, why don't you go from like the best matchup to the worst matchup for the three teams? Like who do you have as like the best matchup?
What do you mean?
For IG. Who do you think IG has? Or okay, Doran, you're mad at me already.
It's all right, mate. I want host. Okay. Here's a question for both of you. Like Kelsie, you can go first on this one. Who do you think is the better player between Rookie and the Shy? If for some reason you had to pick one.
If I had to pick one?
If you had to.
It's actually... So I think that the Shy is the best top laner in the tournament, but I don't think Rookie is the best mid laner in the tournament. So...
Who's better?
I think... So I actually think Rookie is more arrogant than the Shy. So... And I think that has a lot to do with like when he takes his resets or when like he doesn't care if he has pinks on either side of his lane is like the biggest thing also. So like a lot of teams, they're really hyper focused on, okay, our support and jungle are going to reset together. We're going to put pinks in these pixel brushes or these side flanking lanes. And then Rookie is like, no, I don't care. I'm just going to play up and I'm going to play these champions that can get collapsed on.
Are you about to say Caps?
I'm gonna hold my
Obviously Faker. Come on.
Faker. I think it's Faker because
Okay,
Faker is like way more responsible about when he's like how correctly he's playing his matchup, right? And he also, I think Faker is better at I guess the best way to put it is that when someone on SKT makes a mistake, Faker is like better at compensating for that than any other mid in this tournament. So
okay. Who would your pick be, Loco?
As the best mid lane?
No, who was the best? You didn't even follow the original fucking question. Who is better, the Shy or Rookie?
My God. Holy shit. I come here to put on a show, like participate, be a good host.
Well, anytime you want to turn up and say something interesting, go ahead. No one's stopping you. Fucking hell.
You're so encouraging.
Who's better, the Shy or Rookie? Who do you think is better?
I think
I
think the Shy is so much better, and I think Shy is like... He's so arrogant, but so good and just so mechanically insane. And I can tell this guy has communication problems. Like when him and Ning play, there is clear communication problems where Ning wants to do one thing and he wants to do one thing. And also in team fights, there's so many times where he's going in alone or forcing a fight 3v5 and still coming out ahead just due to the angle being too good or just due to him being way too ahead. He's just way too insane of a player individually for me to not rank him as the best player at this tournament.
I don't see communication problems between him and Ning. I don't know, like if you're talking about them misjudging situations.
Ning does fucking great when he does ganks top. They pretty much always get.
I mean, I feel like their synergy is super underrated. Like,
really?
It's actually so hard for me to just say the Shy is the best top laner at the tournament full stop.
Mm-hmm.
Without saying like they're the best top jungle duo at the tournament, because I think it's like I don't remember what the jungle proximity statistics are. I had to get them from Clement, but it was like it was by far it was like 10% higher than any other jungler in LPL. Like he's just always topside, and sometimes this is just I think they just kind of accept it. So split map is really popular in LPL. Like you could say that split map is really popular in the meta in general right now, but it was like every game of LPL playoffs was basically split map. And I think that it's just if the enemy team split maps on them, regardless of what it is, they just for bot side they're like okay, whatever, we don't care. Even if this is bad for us, like we'll make it count more around our top side than bottom. And obviously there were some games where I feel like IG, and this is why I rate their understanding of their own early game win conditions like really highly, is because if their composition is bot side focused, they'll play around bot when they can. But if it's like, okay, jungle matchup is weak, mid is kind of a coin flip, then we'll just accept the split map scenario and we'll still win harder through it, even if it's like Vlad versus Jace, as you mentioned.
So
and then also that game wasn't Vlad winning solo, okay? Like Lee Sin was in his lane at level 2, okay?
multiple times. There's multiple times where he does win.
But that was the one that like people point out because it was like 20 CS up. So I think that's but the thing is that almost every team against IG, like they would pick Jace. This was the weirdest phenomenon, okay? They would pick Jace and then they would split map for bot side. Like, why the fuck are you doing that?
Don't worry, NA teams do that all the time too.
Yeah, but it was so bad. It was like, just don't pick Jace or just ban Jace. Why is Rise getting through every single game? Why is, like, so this is the thing that, like, really weirds me out about both G2 and IG, is that these teams were so strong a lot because they could flex, like, every single flex solo lane on blue side. And just other teams that played them couldn't really do that as well. Like,
understandably, what's the odds you'd have an equally good mid and top, right?
Like Yagao can't play a lot of the top lane picks that Zoom can, for example, so they wouldn't be able to flex it. So what is the point of not banning Rides or any of these other picks? And then they just let him have this stuff like every game. And then they split Matt. They would pick Jace as an answer, and of course Jace is going to go top because Yagao's not going to play it. So then they choose to split Matt for bot side, and then Jace doesn't get ahead, and then you have like a useless Jace pick. And this is more the TOP series because obviously Jingdong picked like Ornn and crap like this, and then they picked Jace only one game, but TOP did it like twice and then subbed out their top laner, which was really random. But yeah, I think this is like the weirdest thing for me because I feel like no one is going to do that at MSI.
Right, I want to have a little rant about the Shy here because there's so much we can go into. So we'll start here, right? First things first, I do very much admire this guy's level of skill and definitely his like vision for playmaking. About the only person I could actually compare it to is like original Faker when he came out. Like the amount of ridiculous like plays that he goes for when he's going to survive on that much health. And if you die, you know, it's not like it's a scenario where you've got nothing to lose. You give the other guy the advantage if you die in that scenario, but he always goes for them. And the execution level on him is obviously unreal. Like all that needs to be said is this. I'm not going to say who it is. It's not a famous person, don't worry. But there's someone I know who's played League of Legends from the beginning, basically. And they have played a lot. They have watched a lot. They've watched the major regions. But they haven't watched the game in the last years that much. Like that's where they sort of like got less interested. They moved away from the game. And because I know they haven't watched this guy play beyond, you know, like maybe they watched the odd game at Worlds or something. I found like, I looked through all the best Shy highlight clips and I found the best one and sent it to them. And I just said to them, just watch the clips on this particular part of the video. Like watch this 5-minute segment. And I'm not exaggerating. This person even, and like, I should probably put the other context in, which is if you come from a game like Counter-Strike or Quake, almost nothing in League of Legends is actually that sick. It's only sick in the context of League of Legends. Like, if you know that a player shouldn't be able to, that makes it sick. It's the meta context. The actual, like, on-screen stuff you're seeing often isn't that crazy because, like, half the shit isn't even skill shots. Like, half it's just the order you do it in and your timing. So it's never, if you're someone who came up on Quake and Counter-Strike, it's hard to get, like, super blown away. Like, holy shit, how did he do that? It's like, you know, it doesn't happen often. This person also has that background. They've watched all these games, and even they agreed with me, right? I didn't like seed the water or influence. I just said, "What do you think of this?" And they agreed that literally, like, he has the best highlight clips I think of anyone to ever play League of Legends. Like, it's actually unreal. Even some of the random clips that are just like against any old person, like some of the clips are like they're better than anyone else's clips I've ever seen in League of Legends. I've watched a lot of players as well. Now the reason why I say at the beginning to hype him up that he's this fucking godlike player is because he is obviously insanely good. But what's funny is this reminds me of when Monty used to analyze the Samsung white bot lane, right? Because what he always used to say, because in his mind, remember, his bias, which he'll admit, is to play correct League of Legends and to, you know, min-max your risk versus your advantage and just try and win through like every little edge. So basically a very Korean way of thinking. He always used to say about Imp, like, oh, Imp is just, he's too cocky, you know, he just trolls half the time, you know, like half the time he's just jumping in there. And it's like, no, Monty, like what you're missing here is that's actually a form of selective confirmation bias, because what you're doing is when he jumps in and then Samsung White shit all over their opponent in that game, you go, look at this, they're the most dominant team in the world, nobody can stop them. But when he jumps in and he dies, you go, he was just trolling there, why did he do that? It's like, it's the same side, they're two sides of the same coin, Monty. Like, it's the same impetus that makes him do it when you think is wrong. He's actually not doing it because he's some genius who micro-calculated everything. He can't see the map, like, I remember, he's an individual player in the game. So half the time I always thought with Monty, it's like, you do realize if you argued against him doing some of the moves you don't like, you'd never get half the moves you do. So it's the same with the Shy, which is when you think he's arrogant, Loco, I'll give you my analogy, right? Because this guy didn't come up like you. He didn't play fucking League of Legends as a PC bang. He didn't join a Korean team. He didn't have coaching. He basically is
He's a streamer.
He had none of the background of any other elite tier Korean we've ever seen. Here's the analogy, right? There's a movie, it came out in 1994. It was the movie version of Street Fighter. So even though a lot of people probably fucking born after that, I'm going to assume some people might have seen this movie because it was one of those bad Hollywood, you know, like adaptations of a fucking video game. So you can imagine it's not a great movie. Mm-hmm. But there's a scene in the movie where one of the big reveals, because the main protagonist of the movie is Guile, who's played by Jean-Claude Van Damme. One of the big reveals in the movie to show how evil M. Bison is he brings out the guy who was like Guile's fucking soldier best buddy, and he's turned this guy into Blanca, who, if you know from the video game, is the guy who's like just like a savage animal. He just shoots electricity because he's just angry. Well, the explanation they had in the mid-90s for how you would create a character like that, that's obviously patently absurd. It's like a comic book character, but they're trying to like do that thing that they used to do back in the day, where it's like, rather than now where they'll make like a superhero just ridiculous, because it's a ridiculous premise. You've already got suspension of disbelief. Back then, they always tried to find like a real world explanation for how someone could be like Batman or something, which is a silly premise in itself. So the explanation they tried to come with, Loco, was when you find the fucking Blanca guy, is he basically comes up and he's been like strapped in this fucking chair where he's been like laid down like this and he can't move. And they've been pumping him with steroids the whole time. Because remember, this is the 90s, so like steroids are the ultimate, like, oh my God, it's like leveling up your character. Like, obviously mad over exaggerated the effect of them. And they've been pumping him with steroids, and the whole time they've had him like Clockwork Orange style, like being forced to like view all these images of extreme violence and like, you know, cruelty and stuff, even though you might even argue that would probably make someone go into extreme depression and maybe lose all hope. But anyway, whatever. In their world, because remember, this is the 90s, Loco. In the 90s, people believed in this concept called video nasties, which is basically they used to blame violent movies for violence in life. So their implication was if you watch these things, you'd become incredibly violent, right? And that's their explanation for why he's Blanca, this like savage beast. Well, think about it, right? If you came up and you're a Korean who can't even speak Chinese at the time, and you're just playing fucking 12 hours of Chinese solo queue every game as a fucking streamer, you're playing for teams that aren't even good when you're like at streamers. They're not including you in fucking scrims. They're not teaching you the game. They're literally just, like, what's mad is someone basically just put the Shy on a shelf, and then a few people traded for the concept of the Shy, and then one day he just came into IG and started playing Rumble every fucking game. Like, he wasn't even supposed to be a player. So this guy literally, Loco, went from streamer to I'm in one of the best LPL teams just in the game now. Like, I'm just live in the match. So where was he supposed to learn all this macro play? Where was he supposed to learn how to play off? No, what he does is he actually, this is not an exaggeration, he plays fucking professional games of League of Legends like it is solo queue. Like, if you look at the mad, ridiculous overreaches he does, like the dives that don't even make sense, where it's like, even if you kill the other guy, you die as well. So is it really, you know, like you're gambling on such small edges. So like what I'm saying here, basically, Loco, is if he did play as more of a conservative player, or he played like, my analogy would be Smeb, because I always thought the reason why Smeb is the best top laner maybe ever is because he's probably one of the best of all time of actually knowing when to be like, this isn't my game. You know what? We can win this game without me just fucking smashing lane. I don't have to get a kill in reply to this guy. Most carry top laners don't know that. Like, that, as much as people ride on Huni, a lot of carry top laners are like that. I've seen a lot of them do that in many years. So the Shy, if he played like that, he wouldn't go for half the genius shit he's doing in the game. Like, it's actually the same phenomenon I'd say with Caps. Like, they get away with doing all that genius shit, so their coach doesn't stop them, but they actually should be stopped. Like, if they were a bronze player and you coached them, you'd be like, don't ever do that shit again. Like, none of these moves should be in your range. Like, these are all bad, you know, they're too risky. So I think along those lines, here's my final point. I'll summarize everything, because I can do this, Loco. I keep talking while thinking. I can do two things at once, my son. So anyway, this is how I tie it all into all of your points.
Okay.
If I have to decide who is better between the Shy and Rookie, I actually at the moment would still go with Rookie. And the reason why is this, is because I actually think, to tie it all in, first of all, the Shy and Rookie both play in the same fucking team. That is so OP already. Like, there should only be allowed one of those sorts of players.
Like Wonder and Cats.
But then you have both of them on the same team at the same time, and then with a team setup that even emphasizes them both just carrying, and they share the same fucking champion pool, so they're going to get all, like, one of them's going to get a carry pick almost any game they want. So I actually think the Shy, here's the key difference. I've seen Rookie play for years without the Shy. I knew he was a very good player. Played differently sometimes, he was still a very good player. I think if you put the Shy on one of those other, like if the Shy had to swap positions with Zoom and go on to Jing Dong Gaming, the Shy wouldn't be the fucking best player in the world. I don't think he'd even be the best top laner. I think all of a sudden you'd see all those over extensions get punished, like when Marin left SK Telecom, like when Hooney's been on about 4 different years with the teams. Like, it's not that he'd be bad, he'd still be a very good player, but the difference is he wouldn't have someone else to help carry a game that he's half fucking up. He wouldn't have all that jungle attention. He wouldn't have Ning. Yeah, go on.
But yeah, I think that the thing is that it's It's weird because Rookie has always been like that kind of player too. Because I don't think that Rookie is.
I think they both get a buff from playing with each other, though. That's the thing.
Is someone who's like not. Rookie isn't someone who's compensating for like the Shy's screw ups because he's like more mature and has a better understanding of what he should be doing. He's like almost encouraging this kind of thing. Like when the Shy first started playing with Ning, and it was Rookie and his rookies, like basically was what the team was. Because one thing about the Shy is people are like, oh, he was just ignored, and no, people thought this guy was going to be good. The reason why he wasn't playing was because he came over to China when he was 15 and started streaming. Like he was pretty young, and then he basically got traded to IG when he was old enough to play. So like this is the thing, like people knew he was going to be good. Like he was being invested into. It's not like he just came out of nowhere. So but when he came in, it was like the same time Ning came in, and Ning was like had barely been a jungler. He basically swapped roles a year before this happened, and then like they were basically diving past mid tier 2 or topside tier 2 like before 10 minutes into the game, and Rookie was like fucking going with them. There was no reasoning that was like, oh, maybe we shouldn't do this because we're all going to die and then the game becomes harder. It was just like, no, Rookie is almost kind of instigating this kind of behavior. So it was just like they're just two of them and all the eggs are in the same basket. And part of the reason, and some of the times when I see them playing like towards bot side, it feels less like they're playing towards bot side and more like they're trying to play for the enemy team to send their jungler bot so that it's an isolated 1v1 topside or an isolated 1v1 mid or something like this, so that they can get the most out of that. So even then it's like bot lane is playing to pull pressure rather than just like we're playing for bot this game. So like I think it was the first game IG versus JD was, and Rookie is just like playing so far up and so far, like if one of them plays so far up, I think this is really the IG mentality, the way you watch their games. Like if any of their lanes, if all of their lanes play so far up at once, then the jungler is going to come to one of those lanes, and even if like that player dies, then we can probably like the other two lanes will probably like solo kill, right? Like because they don't have jungle pressure and they don't have to worry, they can just dive and then 1v1 outplay. So it's like almost the IG mentality if you see them do this kind of thing. And like the first game, it was like, okay, I'm Rookie, I'm playing so far up. Nocturne just turned 6, Rakan just turned 6. I'm gonna roam mid as Rakan. We're going to dive their enemy mid laner so that Nocturne has to waste his first ult mid instead of trying to shut down Ryze on top side. Like this is the kind of stuff like that I'm pretty sure they think about based on how they play. It's like they're trying to pull pressure so that like their win condition can be a monster later.
Also, like I know a lot of people take like, you know, a crazy scenario and then make it like a player does that all the time. But the amount of times that IG could just traditionally get the inhibitors and make the game almost over, they instead dive past and just have fights through the towers and go right into the fucking, like the amount of times they blow what would be like a Korean team would just end this game 100%. Like they would just take the inhib, maybe kill it, get a kill or two, back off. Like it's bizarre because I've never seen a team. It's like they're doing shit that shouldn't work at this level, but the players are just so good they can brute force it somehow.
Well, Kelsie,
shouldn't really work, should it?
I want to kind of ask you about what you said. I think it's a combination and accumulation of just having so many talented players and being so headstrong about wanting to play for kills. Like they're so fucking kill hungry. This team doesn't care about dragons. This team honestly doesn't care about turrets. Like I feel like the only turret they really
care about turrets. They care about turrets and Rift Herald. They do not give a fuck about dragon. After that they really care about turrets and Rift Herald.
I feel like they're a team where you just had players that were so good, that were so aggressive and so headstrong, and you put them together and it worked. I don't feel like this is like a controlled experiment where they're like, if you like you said, if you play all three lanes aggressive as possible, then even if one lane dies, we're gonna get ahead in the other two lanes. Like I don't think they came up with this. It's just a beautiful disaster. It's just a beautiful disaster of a team that somehow functions. Like I feel like people on the team brainwashed each other to being aggressive and to being kill hungry, and now it's working because they're all on the same page.
This has always kind of been like the idea reason that though, like no matter what players they've had, they've always kind of tried to play like this. Like
who's the consistency? Is it just the owner? Is it what the owner wants? Because it's not the coaching staff.
Yeah.
Coaching staff rotates, so who's the consistency in it?
basically just the owner. And I can almost see it being like him actually having an effect on. He legitimately like will duo with a lot of their players and have them kind of boost him, and then like they'll just troll all the time. And that was like
taking cues from Mark Merrill there.
That was like a legitimate like criticism of Wang Sitong early on, is that he would be taking players away from practice to like duo with him, and then if the players didn't want to do something that the coach said, like he would be on the player's side because the players would be like his buddies, right? And this is what makes IG such like a player-run team and like such a troll kind of atmosphere and troll kind of brand, is like definitely Wang Sitong's influence. I don't know. I think he's matured a bit like since 2011 when he first bought IG, but I do think that like there are some echoes of that as it goes on, and obviously he's going to hire players who he likes personally also. Like I think like him and Rookie were I'm probably Kakao and Rookie appealed to him because KTA also was the kind of team that he wanted his team to play like, sure. I would imagine, right?
Makes sense.
Because he had like Kid, Zatai, all these types of players that just wanted to play like super ham, and then they would always try to play like this like really weird. And this was like why when IG and WE were the top two teams in China, IG were just so inconsistent because they would always try to go for this stuff that makes no sense. This just kind of kept being consistent throughout IG as an identity. And then the kinds of players that he hired, okay, we're gonna get the Shy, JackieLove is a Draven player, right? And a streamer. The Shy is a streamer. Ning's attitude is like, I'm gonna pick Graves bot lane, and bot lane he even played top like one game and played Graves top, and he just kind of goes when he was on Young Miracles and he goes super ham and plays super aggressively, and it's like, okay, well, we need a jungler on Young Miracles, so I'm going to swap to jungle because Graves is a jungler now, so I'm going to play Graves like this as well. And then he comes on and he's just still playing like these super ham, super aggressive jungle champs. Like, all of these players were like this, right? And so I think it's a deliberate decision to pick them up. And I think it's probably also influenced by Rookie, because Rookie is the kind of player who always wanted to play like this too, so...
Sure. Right, Loco, I'm also going to give you a little bit of a tip here, which is when you know the guest, you also know how to ask them a question, right? So normally, you notice we often try to ask the guest first for their opinion on a new topic because we don't want them to like feel pressured by what we say or whatever. But I can already tell you, as you just saw there, like you could say anything right now. Like it's sunny outside, and if it's not, Kelsey's just going to tell you it's not, Loco. You're actually completely
That's because Kelsie doesn't like
every
me.
day for the last 4 years, and there's nothing approaching sun. Do you even know what sun is? So we can ask you first on this question. Let's start then. What we'll do is we'll look at some of the matchups IG might have. So what do you think if IG plays SK Telecom? Obviously what a lot of people anticipate could be the final. What do you think, Loco? How will it go?
I think
how do they match up?
I think it's SKT's best, or I think it's IG's worst matchup. I think IG will do really well versus G2, do really well versus TL. I think SKT is probably the one team that's going to give them problems. I think mid lane is going to be a really, really big part of how the game plays out, and I'm very curious, but where SKT is weak, I would say is Khan, where he's the most exploitable, and the Shy plus Ning is going to be a hard thing to deal with. I think they're going to get there. I think they're going to get smacked around by IG initially, where Khan will play too aggressive, Clid won't be there in time, but once they experience IG a few times, I think they'll be perfectly fine facing IG. They'll make sure they curb the aggression. I think IG isn't as good as SKT in full-on 5v5 team fights, and SKT needs to get the game to drag on, but at first, they're not going to be ready for the aggression. So in group stages, the first few times they meet, I can definitely see SKT dropping games, but if they meet in semis or they meet in finals, I think SKT will have experience IG enough where they know exactly how much pressure they need to deal with early and how much they need to draft for early game, just enough to get through IG's storm and weather it out and be fine in mid and late game and team fight.
Okay, Kelsie, what do you think?
I think that SKT kind of got away with almost trolling some of the early games in the final, just because it was in a situation where if Griffin wastes time and we waste time, that's beneficial for us because our team cost scales better. And Griffin was actually wasting time trying to dive like basically undiveable lanes and everything else that they were doing. I think that a lot of people say that SKT are really smart about picking the fights where they can win, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I see a lot of misexecution when they TP in And that's just like maybe Khan is trying to flank on Jace and gets picked off because why are you trying to flank on Jace? Or he'll like wait too long to pull the trigger when he's playing Hecarim to go in, and then they'll give up Dragon and then he'll get cut off and die. Or like their ability to pull the trigger is not as good, I think, as like some of the other teams.
They're very good about receiving, like someone hitting them first and hitting back though. They're very good about letting other people be aggressive. Yeah.
Kind of. I think that they're good about doing that. I think their mid to late game control is really good, but if they can't get that, then I think like early game, I really don't know. Like they seem really way more lost than other teams, and some of that is just like bad timing to try to hand off blue buff, or situations where why is Clid like even trying to contest this bot side? They don't have anything, like they can't fight this, right? So he's just wasting time. He could be trading for top side, but they're not trading for top side, except like this. And then it's just, I see a lot of flaws with how SKT execute like what they're doing early. So I don't know, like it's really weird to me because obviously Clid is as a jungler who's smart and really aggressive compared to other SKT junglers, but it still feels like this feels like a team that's more reliant on their bottom lane than SKT's ever been, and that has to do with like I think if Mata and Teddy can control the game by like walking mid and then walking to Herald or walking top or something like this, then that's really good for them. And they can survive like that, but I don't necessarily see them as IG's hardest matchup. I think G2 is a harder matchup for them than SKT. Oof. And I do think that SKT is a harder matchup for. I think I favor SKT like slightly more versus G2, I think, than IG, for certain reasons. Like,
what about this? We'll get into that matchup in a second. So on the SKT IG one, a question I have is this: is if you look in LCK. One of the bizarre things actually about SK Telecom is by the end of the split, the two best teams aside from SK Telecom were obviously Griffin and Kingzone. And those are two teams that don't have very strong top laners. They don't have the best player in the game in top lane. So the top laners in the LCK actually ended up being on the lower teams. Like even Dam1, they obviously had Naguri and Flame, and then you have to go way further down to get to Keen, and Smeb wasn't even that good this split, to be honest. So, like, in terms of actual having to deal with a super fed top laner on a really top team, SK Telecom didn't really have to do it, if you look at it. So, if they play this matchup against IG, do you think that they try to play through top lane at all and try to go head-to-head with Khan and the Shy with, like, the logic that, you know, the Shy's just going to push anyway? Or do they go, as you said, when teams see IG, they still think you play through the bot lane, you try and attack their bot lane? Well, obviously, the MVP of the finals was Teddy on SK Telecom. So do you think SK Telecom will go the top lane route or the bot lane route? What do you think?
I think that they should go the top lane route, specifically by using Faker. So I think that there will be windows because Rookie takes like really greedy resets mid. I think there will be windows where Faker like has item advantage or back advantage, and then they can make something happen top really easily. And they can win the game that way, even if I don't think Khan is evenly matched versus the Shy. And even if I rate Ning and the Shy's 2v2 really highly, because I feel like bot lane will just kind of win out on their own in most situations. And that's where SKT's like strength is more likely going to be, is getting Teddy to a place where he just kind of wins out and takes over teamfights like that, which doesn't need jungle pressure. But I think that they will be more tempted to play like through bot to mid. And so that's why I think, because that's more how they've been playing, and that's where they think, okay, well, IG's weakness is their bot lane, so this is good for us. I think that they're more likely to try to do that, and that's why I think that it's not a good matchup for them, and why I think that like IG is more favored versus SKT. So.
Okay. Right. We haven't got that much time left, so...
What about TL?
What is it?
What about TL, Kelsey?
Who gives a fuck about TL? We'll do that with someone else. Come on, that's not even interesting. Okay. Like, what about the G2 side then? So you started going into that a little bit. What about when G2 plays against IG? Because obviously, you know, they themselves have a pretty similar storyline. You know, we came from being super strong solo laners with a lot of flex potential. Now the bot lane, in theory, is stronger and likewise sort of plays on its own a bit. So you said before they're the team that plays the right way, or they're the smartest team or whatever. So is that going to allow them to beat IG?
I think it can, but my biggest question mark is mid lane, because I think SKT can get advantages through mid, but the last time we saw Caps versus Rookie, it wasn't like super good. And I think their mid jungle duo is, I think G2 are more kind of mid jungle centric, and by that I mean like Jankos will take the lead, and most teams that in Europe when they try to play against G2, they'll go and they'll kind of like hover mid first, so that Caps has to sort of back off and they get mid prio, and then the jungler will go topside. I think that's not the worst, but a lot of times the way that G2 react to that is that they're almost like so conditioned that when they see that, they expect that, okay, the enemy team is getting mid prio so they can make a play on the sideline. Which sideline do we think that they're going to make a play for? Okay, we're going to just send the jungle there. We're going to stall time. Caps is going to push out mid, and then Caps is going to TP to that side or whatever the fuck happens, and then they can play it like really well like that. So for me, if Caps can be in a position where they're picking like strong lanes for him and he can actually match Rookie this time, then they can win, and stylistically they should be able to. But I think it's like I have so many questions about this because I feel like it did not go well at Worlds. Like it just did not. And it's also really weird for me because the last time IG played G2, they picked red side, like G2 picked red side, but then they blind picked solo lanes that were already bad matchups for solo lanes that IG had picked, and then
their play through Wonder was especially kind of puzzling, right? Like I don't really know what they thought they were going to get out of that series.
And they picked like weak jungle matchup too, so it would be weird because they would have losing lanes and a bad jungle matchup, and then try to sides, right, and play to the opposite side, but then like they would be playing IG played Talia or something that could just kind of really quickly run along terrain and then almost like counter, and it was really weird to watch. It was such a weird series. Like, why are you picking red side if you're doing this? So that's the other kind of question for me, is because I feel like one of the things that has been really strong for G2 is just their drafts, because they can flex everything everywhere. And if they can't take advantage of it because I don't know, they do something like they did at Worlds, then this matchup also becomes really hard for them. So
Kelsie, could you stop smashing the table? And what do you think of what do you think of Wonder versus the Shy? That's another matchup that people are really hyped about. How do you think that one goes?
I think the Shy is better now. Just individually, I think the topside 2v2 is better for IG as well. Like I think Ning.
You know, that's the most tilt-worthy thing, isn't it, Kelsie? Like, you can feel me on this one. So, in the same way as the reason why it's annoying as fuck that Uzi kind of did become, like, the best AD carry ever is because every fucking pleb was saying it since 2013, and they were wrong back then, but because now they would be right, they're like, see, I told you all along, as though half a decade ago you can just say something that's wrong. Well, the problem is, in line with that, because it's something people are probably interested to know, is the Shy actually is probably better this split than he was last year. So I know every idiot in the world who was a hipster was already calling him like, he's the fucking best player in the world, best top player. Like, the problem with that is they haven't left any room for growth, but it actually looks even better this split.
Yeah, I think so. I think Wonder has also improved a lot this split, but Wonder to me was the best player on G2 last at Worlds. Like Papa Smithy recently made that tweet that Wonder was for him the best player in the West.
That's Western play, yeah.
That's kind of how I felt about Worlds as well. So I think that Wonder has just been really solid. I think so. It's a really exciting matchup for me. Like everyone is talking, like Rookie versus Caps, Rookie versus Faker, but I think Wonder versus the Shy is one of the matchups that I'm most excited about. I think I have of all of the top laners at MSI, I have the most faith in Wonder. So, other than the Shy, so I think that's something I'm excited about. Yeah.
If someone can do well versus the Shy, I agree with you. It's gonna be Wonder. It's not gonna be Impact. It's not gonna be Con. So if Wonder can't do well versus the Shy, then I don't think anyone can.
That's why actually in that matchup the pressure's on fucking Jankos. He's the one who's going to look shit if the Wonder gets absolutely smashed. So that's why I would favour IG over G2 as well. Like that's one thing to touch on what Kelsie just said there. I think the most whack angle on this one. So like, come on, Fion. sort it out. I know it's faker, mate, but like you have to keep up with the times. I don't know why everyone hyped the mid lane for this tournament. Like Jensen's not going to play fucking like it's like season 6, mate. Like Faker literally plays Lissandra in Lissandra comps. Like these aren't the players that like this isn't season 3 assassin meta where everyone's going to go 1v1 each other. Like Rookie will try and do that, Caps will try and do it, but that's actually why this meta isn't going to be about the mid lane. Because if anything, Caps has exactly the wrong players to go against that style. Top lane's where this fucking tournament is decided. Because the team like Team Liquid have a weak top lane, then you have the teams with a strong top lane, then you have Khan somewhere in the middle. So to me, the top laner probably decides who wins all these fucking overall matchups. Because even if it's not him individually, it's how you play to them. So that's good. Have you got any final words for this segment, Kelsie? Any final remarks you want to give people?
Yeah, I think if IG win the tournament, then Ning is going to be MVP again, because I really do think that Jungle Difference kind of decided LPL playoffs, and Jungle Difference was basically the big difference between IG and G2. Not necessarily the players themselves, but just the game plan that IG came in with their jungler, and the fact that he could maximize the difference in draft between like Talia, Gragas, stuff like this. So I think that Ning, like everyone is talking about Rookie in the Shy, but I think really going to be the difference maker. So yeah.
Well, thanks for being on the show, Kelsie.
Right. So this is one of the mega episodes. We've already had Kelsie on, so the editor just brings it in at this point in time. So obviously, Loco's so original, he's just literally lining up people's I've also hosted shows with. So apparently everyone in the world said no to Loco, and he's literally gone to the back of the Rolodex. Like, fuck, these people probably say yes. They did about 100 episodes. So well done. You've made a show, Loco.
What if I wanted to do it with people we have good synergy with? I feel like we have good synergy with Kelsie, good synergy with Veteran.
Did we have good chemistry with her, though? Here's the thing. Her answers are straight fire, as always. Our chemistry with her was garbage, mate. I did my best because I know what questions to ask her. You were just literally sat there fucking looking off after and then going like, I think SK Telecom... You weren't even talking about what she was talking about, mate.
Wait,
so anyway, the guest for this one is Veteran. And obviously, he's someone who I do my European podcast with, Elitists United, episode 11 out now, with the EU Masters winner, Leader. Much better than Locodoco's interview with Leader, because we actually know what we're talking about, know the European scene, etc. So not just some arsehole on Skype just going, tell me about the EU Masters when you've never watched a second.
You must be so fucking insecure where you have to shit on my content. You have to be so fucking insecure.
The #1 content creator in esports just gave your content some exposure, motherfucker. You should be thanking me right now. In fact, you can thank me by just shut the fuck up and let me carry this show. Anyway, you're one of those ungrateful ass bitches who can't even get carried, can you? You're the guy in solo queue. You die twice in top lane. You keep feeding all day, don't you? You're fucking calm. Get off this chat. Anyway, bring it back. I need a fucking Smeb in my life. Can we get one in here? Is there a Smeb co-host that I can have? So anyway, Veteran obviously is going to bring the fire. Because Kelsie, she's a slow burner. It's more about how deep you want to go into the game. Whether you've actually watched the games she's talking about is obviously essential because she'll have the reference points in them. Veteran has already, even when I'd tell you EU wasn't the best, he already liked to hype EU as it was and always say, he was... Like, the problem is, to be fair, he did used to keep it in bounds and just go the whole EU will be better than NA, which is not really even that much of a prediction, but whatever, he would do a good job hyping that. The question is this time, Veteran. So just like at Worlds, where, despite what Loco will meme about, there obviously was a legitimate chance Fnatic could have won that tournament.
No.
And Fnatic and G2 both did. They definitely could have. Don't be an idiot. For a start off, Katie Roaster could have beaten G2, could have beaten IG, you cretin, and then it'd be a totally different team playing in the final.
Meet Doran, EU good, NA bad. EU good, NA bad. Herp derp.
Right. What? Just 1 second, Veteran. Let me just take care of this. Just so everyone's aware, Locodoco attempted in May of 2019 to do that shit caveman SpongeBob meme that was never funny in the first place and only half-wits and 14-year-old girls ever did anyway.
SpongeBob is an art.
Because what you do is when you don't have an argument, you go, hey, your argument? Did I win? Did I win? Like when you used to go, oh, go on then, Bjergsen, just win the LCS. He goes, I did it, boss. You go, yeah, boy, I told you to do that. Like, just like that. So anyway.
Just say the thing, EU good, NA bad.
Let's go back to this. Veteran, let's start at the top. G2 is going to win this tournament.
There's actually no reason why they wouldn't. They are their own worst enemies at this tournament. Like they can beat everyone at this tournament. They absolutely can. I said this at Worlds as well, though. When it came to G2, I think especially when it came to their solo lanes back then, we were at the point where there wasn't such a skill discrepancy that it was going to change a losing matchup to a winning matchup. You know, it wasn't going to do that. So then they had to just get winning matchups, and then they fucked that all up in the semifinals by like they got red side, but then they decided not to just counter pick the solo lanes. Yeah, exactly. Just didn't use any of the fucking advantages of being on red side in terms of their solo lanes. It's like they decided, well, you know, if these guys can beat the UZI bot lane, then obviously that's the key to winning the whole tournament, when actually everyone else was playing a completely different meta to what RNG were playing in that tournament. And they didn't seem to recognize that when it mattered. And then Fnatic decided to just pick blue side because, you know, it's, I mean, we already made it to the finals, you know, we've got to spend the day here regardless, why not? Just like go out as fast as possible. I think we're at the same point here, except that G2 are way, way, way more intelligent, not just about the compositions that they pick, but also about the way that they play them. They seem to have become very conscious of their flaws towards the end of the regular split. They were basically, okay, I have to stop this.
He was just doing that to make fun of you, Loco.
That was a garbage fashion suggestion, by the way. Anyway,
you're gonna talk to me about fashion? Oh my god.
I knew it was.
Oh my god.
You just wear whatever Kanye wore a year and a half ago, you daft cunt. We all know what you're doing. Like, you just rock up with like, you're the last person in the world who bought a Supreme hoodie. Like, whenever you buy it, I actually keep track of you. You're my canary in the coal mine. As soon as you buy something, I know to get the fuck off that fashion trend. Start going to sort of some new shit.
I am not really... Wait, this are my... Right.
You
fucking wear Yeezys. You literally wear Yeezys too. Look at my cute Yeezys.
He's holding up like a literal grey boulder and be like, "Look at these sick kicks, homie." It's like,
look at my Yeezys. That's the thing. Doran, you also own Yeezys. What the fuck? I'm 22.
Yes, but he doesn't flaunt them. He doesn't flaunt them.
You wore them on broadcast. What do you mean?
He is a kid.
I only own the Yeezys. I've told people this. I don't have any shame in my game. I own Yeezys because 15-year-olds can't afford them, so they think they're the shit. So I own them so that I show. Guess what?
Well, I'm not 15. I afford them. I can afford them.
I'm trying to show these plebs, you'll never be me. You're not on my level. You can't afford one pair of Yeezys. I've got like 6. I'd fucking throw the Yeezys out when they get one hole in them. Buy a new pair tomorrow. And you know what? Half the time, I don't even enter those little raffles like you little fucking beggars out there retweeting Mr. Beast so one of you might get $10,000. You pathetic cunts. Whenever anyone on my retweet one of those people who say they're going to give out free money, it's like, I just unfollow it. It's like, I don't need little fucking digital paupers in my life. Like, please, sir, could I have some more? So anyway, the point I was going to get, I don't even enter those competitions. I just buy them straight up at whatever the fucking exorbitant price it is. I just look on eBay like, what, fucking $10,000? Yeah, go for it. Yeah, have it, you daft cunt. Now give it shoes.
Guys,
I don't even need it.
Doran might be rich, but I'm not. Doran might be rich, but I'm not rich, so don't forget to use your Twitch Primes.
No, exactly. He needs those fucking... He's literally begging for subs now. Jesus Christ. He's begging for free subs.
I literally just said...
Why not beg for a real sub? How about if someone actually cares about this content and has actual money and you're not from, I don't know, some fucking third world country? Give us some of it then. Maybe we'll keep making more shows. If not, then piss off. It's not a charity, you know. Anyway, back to the episode. So this is the question, Veteran. Is, as you said, obviously people are going to compare G2 IG because the two teams are here and they did play at Worlds, but that was obviously a very different G2 squad. So now that we've heard this news that apparently Mickey X has been scrimming recently and he is going to play, and you know, we don't have to worry about the whole promiscue angle, right? Do you have any concerns about that aspect? Like, what happens with the bot lane of G2? What happens with Mickey X? Are you concerned about that?
No, now that we know that Mickey X is likely to play all of the games, there's obviously zero concerns. And the big concern that we had about G2, or that I specifically had about G2, that I was kind of getting at before you found your window to go in on Loco, is that towards the end of the regular split, when the meta was starting to shift away from just purely low econ tops, where you could just comfortably ignore Wonder for ages, Wonder would play that out better than any other top laner would play out at the time. And then get really farmed on side lanes later on. They were still playing really, really hard around their bot section, and this was actually starting to cost them. And I think that this cost them a lot more than just subbing and promiscue. Subbing and promiscue plus the fact that they were still playing like this was kind of like a perfect storm of things. Not that promiscue is necessarily bad, but he's not Mickey X and he hasn't been playing with them for the last half year. And then at playoffs, you saw a completely different G2 in terms of they were playing really hard around the pressure that Wonder was creating for them. And there were moves, especially in the POV stream, that Wonder was making that would just ordinarily be quite bad were it not for his absolute faith in Jankos as a jungler. And I heard that Kelsie rated the Ning, the Shy Geo as like one of the best, like that top jungle synergy was why they were doing so well. And I think that some of the moves that I saw Wonder making on the POV stream relative to his jungler kind of indicates to me that they are going forward with this synergy in mind as well, which is absolutely what they need to do if they want to take on that. This is where the series is going to be decided. It's going to be decided in the top section, and they have one of the strongest top sections in the world. It's Caps, it's Jankos, it's Wonder, but the big thing that's differentiated them from everyone else is that you can see that their approach to the game at a fundamental level is absolutely correct, which is not something you can say about Team Liquid, for example.
Why the random shot at TL?
Okay.
I gave a random praise at RNG. I'm talking about MSI.
Give me what you mean on both sides there. So obviously the most basic analysis actually would, by the way, even Cloud Templar said something similar. They would say something like Team Liquid plays correct in Korean style and all the rest of that shit. When people used to criticize G2 earlier in the split, where they were, they're just going ham, it's all just skirmishes everywhere, and they're just smashing lane or whatever. Like, why do they play correctly? Give us some more insight on what you mean.
So I actually really like that you brought that up then, if they're saying that like there's like Korean style or like the controlled practice style. I think that what that ends up coming down to more often than not, and this is where G2 get differentiated from the rest of the pack, is that it's like if this lane it can play ahead anyway if you don't make like a significant play around it, and then the jungler can get other advantages in other ways and like maintain map control. You're not taking what they would call the unnecessary risk, where even if the 2v1 would not necessarily be risky, it's not really necessary at this point. So you just get back on the map for tempo in a surefire way, and you don't even bother going for any of these things. I think that's what people mean when they say like this practice control Korean style. The moves Wonder were making would ordinarily be bad, because if the 2v1 didn't work out, didn't result in a kill, he wouldn't actually get back out on the map first, and the team would actually somehow be behind just because he cancelled his reset at certain opportunities. But he's playing with Jankos and pushing his advantage really aggressively, and this is what I think is aggressive play as opposed to like controlled or passive play. It's going for those kinds of moves where if it messed up, your map state's actually going to be kind of bad, despite the fact that you already had an advantage up there, and people would think that this was kind of an unnecessary thing. So that's why I think G2 differentiates itself from Team Liquid, for example. And I also think that having this kind of attitude, and you guys kind of touched on this with IG, does make better players in the long run. It makes players who understand their limits, because they are constantly pushing their limits. You know, if you're never pushing your limits, you're not actually going to understand your limits. And this doesn't just count as players, this also counts as teams. You know, G2 will wipe the map in 18 minutes because they are willing to play like this. They are willing to practice like this. And it's not bad moves so long as you get X, Y, and Z correct. And they have done this until they got X, Y, and Z correct on both sides of the map now. So.
Yeah, by the way, I'll make a quick note there, because actually I saw there was a video on Reddit where Cloud Templar did his predictions for the tournament, and it has all subs, you know, you can read it all in English. And when he gets to SK Telecom, I can't remember if it was SK, I think it was SK Telecom and Team Liquid, he described it in similar fashion, which is basically, he outlined actually something that was quite interesting. I've never heard a Korean explain this. So basically, to him, the Korean style, he called it the Korean base, is the idea of, if you imagine a pentagon for your team, so think about when everyone does those charts where it's like, you know, the gold goes to the AD carry and the LPL, you know, those old charts. His concept was exactly what Veteran was saying, basically, which is the idea that's like, you want all five to be growing out, and ideally the team's really balanced. Now, the reason why that makes logical sense is because, like Veteran said, if you are like, here's the difference: if the Shy hadn't come up in China as a fucking solo queue player and then just come in the LPL, and he'd had to go through Korean coaching, they would do exactly what Veteran says. They would go, right, well, the Shy has a winning matchup here and he's going to get ahead anyway, so let's just leave him to get ahead. And then let's get another lane ahead. Let's do something else on the map and let's add the advantages up and try and make it. Because the theory would be, if you don't give away your advantage and where you're playing through the game, you could change it up at any moment. You can be reactive, you can adapt, you can still win many different games. But like Veteran says, if the meta allows it, there are times it is correct to almost play it like solo queue and just feed the fed lane, just get it even more ahead. Like, if you watch the way League of Legends is now, if that top laner has like 5 kills coming out of lane, good luck dealing with that in a fucking team fight. It's going to be really bad.
You've really touched on why I think Korea can be seen to be struggling. And the reason is because, so the way you've characterized it is that they see that like the Shire Wonder is like doing really well, and then they like they're like, okay, we'll leave you up there. Maybe we'll take Vision, then we'll play around the other side of the map. What I actually think Korea does that has differentiated themselves from everyone is that they see that the Wonder or the Shy is doing really well, and the jungler thinks, how much advantages can I get in my jungle matchup on this side of the map? But then 2 years ago, rubber banding came into play. Now getting like a 2-level advantage in the jungle matchup doesn't matter so much because you press tab and enemy jungler is somehow still even with you in levels, and you're like, what the fuck is wrong with this game? Now getting the lane advantage matters so much more than it did before, to the point where you could potentially sacrifice. Especially this season. Now that you've added stuff like plating to the game, getting those lane advantages matters significantly more. You can afford to get free quadranted in some scenarios, and your team can still be ahead, because if your level's behind the enemy jungler, he can't take 4 quadrants from you consistently. You can rubber band your way back up, but if your laner is 2 levels ahead, that guy's getting plating and accelerating like nothing else, and the enemy laner just can't play. And I think that as a fundamental difference is why Korea ended up struggling, because I think that this is when they saw lane advantages, they saw a window for their jungler to get ahead, and that does not matter anymore. That does not matter anywhere near to the extent they did anymore, because obviously I can't just blanket say it doesn't matter. Sure. This is why you don't see picks like Nidalee in competitive anymore, because this was a niche that they filled really, really well, is that the enemy was basically 4v5 eventually. But that's just not a factor at this point. It's still a factor in your solo queue games, by the way, and it is still a brilliant champion for your solo queue games, but in competitive, not so much.
What do you think, Loco?
I agree with him, but I think Korea is bad because, well, not bad, but Korea fell behind.
Sure.
I think Korea fell behind because they weren't willing to adapt as much as the other regions, and other regions embraced the new meta and embraced the new way of League of Legends so much more than Korea did. I think Worlds was really good for Korea and really good in terms of and also the old school teams getting shit on for Spring was really good. But SKT isn't what I would call the most ideal way to play League of Legends. I agree with Veteran. I think G2 and IG have a better read on the meta and a better playstyle to the current game state than TL or SKT does.
Yeah. So here's the question then. Oh, go on then.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to be like, if Wonder on Jace is getting 4 platings top side, but Faker has a 20 CS advantage, which team am I betting on coming into the mid game? I'm betting on the team with the Jace with multiple platings.
Sure. So Loco, I can already also give you the same spoiler as before. It's the same with Kelsie. Veteran's going to give you his opinion anyway, so you're not going to influence him on Genius.
And Veteran doesn't like me either.
Good reason. What fucking reason would he have to? Wow. You don't realise. That's one of the things people like you will never realize. I'm going to make a video on this soon. It's going to be called something like
Delusions of Locodoco?
No, it's going to be called Nobody Deserves Respect, because I've realised what my appeal is on the internet and why no one's like me, which is Americans believe in this insane concept, in my opinion, that every person should just be respected for just being alive. It's like, no. You start at 0, and until you show me something, motherfucker, you will be treated like you are bringing 0. So that's my philosophy. That's the reason why I tend to have a certain resonance with people out there who also got that real shit.
So anyway, I just like treating people nice.
Question. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm full of love, and I just want to spread that.
Give it a go for the next part. I've heard about you being full of love and wanting to spread it on. That's how you get unmatched on Tinder, homie. Start soft. Ask him for a drink first or something. They know what's coming. So anyway, the question is this, Loco. I asked you before about IG. Now let's do it with SK Telecom.
Yeah.
What do you think, Loco, when G2 plays SK Telecom? Who do you favour?
Oh man, G2 versus SK Telecom, and you're gonna make me go first. So, well, let me talk G2 about what G2 as a team and what I think makes them really special, but I think SKT will deal really well with. So I think G2 as a team are very, very good at problem solving, and they're extremely creative. You'll see game states for G2 in terms of split push and in terms of how they're pressuring the map, in where you never seen these kind of states before, where they're pushing one lane so far up so early in the game, and they play with pressure very well, and they can put teams in awkward spots. I think that is such a big strength of G2, how creative they are and how uncomfortable they can make the opposing team. I think SKT actually deals with this very well. SKT is very good about weathering the storm early and picking the right kind of fight and letting the other team be aggressive on you and deal with it. Very similar to IG. I think SKT might drop a game or two to G2 because of G2 getting a lead in draft, because of G2 putting SKT in situations they've never ever seen before and they never ever dealt with before. But once SKT starts downloading G2 and they realize like how G2 wants to play and what G2 is good at, I think SKT will be fine. There's one thing that SKT does better than any other team in this tournament, it's late game team fighting. If SKT can get the game to a state where it is stable and it's going to come down to 5-1-5 team fight, they will not lose to any other team. And
he's technically right, veteran, because all the other good teams don't ever get into the late game, so they never have to fight, so logically he's right in that sense.
I agree with you.
They never do it.
No, Dorian, I agree with you. I do think G2 and especially IG, they don't get into late game 5v5 team fight situations because they end the game early. If SKT's shield breaks and they get busted open by G2 and IG, yes, like SKT is just going to look pretty foolish and they're going to get stomped by these teams. But if they're able to hold, I feel like SKT will win.
So last time I was on the show, you brought me on to... Actually, no, last time I was on the show, I had to host... Oh, no, that was it. Okay, yeah. You brought on Grabs to talk about... Yes. Yeah, you brought on Grabs to talk about the playoffs, but you actually hadn't watched G2 versus Origin. Have you actually watched G2
Yeah,
versus Origin?
I caught up and watched all those games.
And you think that it fucking matters if G2 are monster behind early? The impressive part about G2 is not their early game. These guys are not a win game team. They literally haven't been since the first weekend. It's the biggest mischaracterization of them that is out there. These guys mid game is ridiculous. Their lane setups are insanely impressive.
I agree with you completely on that. I told you, like, they play pressure well, and they
the storm is not something to be weathered in the early game. In fact, the SKT can have all the leads that they want. They actually don't play out these setups as well as G2 do right now. They are nowhere near as creative with them as G2 are right now.
I agree with you.
And this is the thing I was trying to go with on the compositional point. Well, then you disagree with yourself. On the compositional point from way earlier on that I was bringing up, is that they'll use picks like Galio with their lane setups in the way that no other team will. Like, they will put
100% agree. I agree. Those are all my points.
Then why would you make that statement? Your point was that G2 are playing with such exceptional leads that they can push them all throughout the mid to late game and they can end the game before it hits late game. They have been in multiple scenarios where they have been well behind in the early game, but they will still close it out before they ever have to see a team fight versus compositions that are incredibly strong team fighting compositions. So I have no idea why you characterize them that way.
So I agree with you. G2 is incredibly creative and they put teams in uncomfortable situations where they've never been before. And they play the map so wide and they bring on so much pressure points. And we haven't seen teams deal with it well. And I think Origin's also a very rigid team and a very systematic team. So they had incredibly hard time dealing with it. But I think a team like SKT is a little bit more adaptive, is a little bit more flexible, and is a little bit more experienced in terms of players, and just the raw players are better, where they will lose to G2 earlier on. They will be uncomfortable. They will get out pressured. But the adjustments that they'll make will allow them to weather the storm in the mid game and get the game dragged on to a 5v5 team fight where they can start winning.
You think that individually speaking, they're going to swing mid-game setups that are just set up in G2's favor because they have the correct champions in the correct lanes at the correct times?
I think
I don't get your... Because when your argument was that they team fight well, I could understand your argument, but now I don't quite understand it.
Well, I'm saying, like, in mid-game, right? They won't give up enough. Yes. Like, so G2 puts teams in really fucking uncomfortable situations where they haven't experienced it in practice, and the solo laners just will not back off, and they bounce the pressure so well, and teams make a mistake and G2 capitalize on it, and then the game closes after they get Baron, and then them going into split push situations, right? Agree.
The mistake is normally the setup itself, though. Like, the mistake is that they are playing... Okay, when they start playing out their setups, they end up playing it out into G2's setups improperly. It's not necessarily that, like, G2 are playing the lanes out and then enemy team fucks up and then G2 like, oh, now we can, like, group someone and take an objective. It will be, like... That's why I brought up the Origin series, because it was just that they straight up opted to do a protracted 3-1-1 scenario where they will lose mid-priority anyway, but the problem is that the composition from Origin want to be playing out a 4-1 situation, and they weren't able to do that effectively because if they were starting to lean towards topside, they would lose objective control over the next Drakes, and Wander is the guy that is actually going to be able to split push in the late game to help them avoid a team fight. So they had to deal with this kind of double threat. That's purely a lane setup thing. It's not necessarily that, like, there's a misstep that's coming out from Origin that got immediately capitalized on. You could identify I was identifying the Drakes and the over prioritization of Drakes as like an issue for Origin in that series, but the initial setup itself was perfectly situated to avoid a Kai'Sa Galio collapse, and that was something that was incredibly intelligent that I don't think SKT have actually met up with yet. They haven't met up with a team that is able to do this.
And
So
they will lose to G2 early.
Whether the Stormers,
No, they'll lose to G2. They'll lose to G2 in the group.
early. That was how they lost the 35
No,
minutes.
he means they'll like. Well, let's say actually, Loco. Do you mean inside of one game, or do you mean when they first?
No, I think what is it for SKT? They will have bad matchups versus IG and G2 the first few times they meet. They will have bad matchups, but the more they meet,
you think they'll adapt?
the more they meet, the better and better it will get for SKT. The first time they meet in group.
Here's the difference, right? Is normally when Korea used to have the best team. I always used to think personally the adaptations were slight. It was like a small tweak here. Maybe we would play a different champion top lane. Maybe we do something different with the jungler, or we ban differently. They never used to like radically change their whole game. If anything, it was usually other teams trying to change to do what Koreans had shown was strong. Usually misguided and didn't execute it, but whatever, you see the meta that emerged. Now, the reason why this is bizarre to me, Loco, is I'm amazed at your faith in SKT. It reminds me of Papa Smithy. Like, Papa Smithy tried to sell this whole angle that, like, SKT isn't just this really great late game team, you know? They can do it all. They could be great early, they could great mid, they great every single fucking lane's good. Now, I was surprised that he came with that angle, even though he's watched all of LCK, and that was his take. Because to me, the reason why I think SK Telecom's in trouble in this tournament is both G2 and IG are going to get in that ass in the mid game. Like, SK Telecom was having trouble against Kingzone and Griffin in the fucking mid game. Like, these guys, what was bad about those two series from SK Telecom to me is they every time Griffin or Kingzone wanted to fight, SKT was like, cool, let's just have a skirmish then. Like, you do not want to do that against G2 and IG. That'll be the end of the game, mate. Like, I agree. Team Liquid and SK Telecom, if they could just make some sort of a deal, like, we agree to lose 10 CS in every lane and we just teleport to the end of the game and it's a 5v5, they might be able to win, but they're never going to get in that position.
Yep.
Like, how are they ever going to engineer that scenario? I don't know how you get there. That's my problem. I think they're both good teams, but you can't ever get to that point.
Like, if you're moving to an adaptation argument now, I actually see it like opposite of you. I actually think G2 are more likely to lose to SKT early on in the tournament. And historically speaking, this is very true for like every European team. We've always had a really bad first week. We are a terrible first week team. And I thought that what Riot did at World Championships by removing first week, second week, and just having it as 1 week was a unnecessary buff to North America. But, you know, just we picked up later on in the games anyway.
Say the line, EU good, NA bad. I get it.
But I mean, NA is just way worse than every. Like okay. So I'm not sure if you've ever seen it, but like there's an average placements of teams at Worlds, and like EU and China are like always neck and neck, and then Korea is obviously above because they keep winning the fucking thing, and then NA is like legit. I think like Flash Wolves and NA were not just on par, but Flash Wolves was a bit higher. So LMS
Not if
as
he
a
didn't
whole
say
was
LMS,
higher.
he meant just Flash Wolves.
Yeah, because it's. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be real. Let's be real. That was Maple's like playground.
If you're gonna fucking shit on NA harder, then don't even put NA in that group. Just separate C9 and NA, and sure they'll be lower.
I was shitting on LMS right now, but he is calling.
If you're gonna fucking go that way, sure.
By hearing North America, like, how the fuck do you hit North America and I say LMS is Maple and Castle's playground? But anyway, I think European teams in general, and I would see G2 falling into this trap. End up coming into the initial stages of tournaments with like, okay, we've had so much success in scrims with this particular composition, okay, or this particular way of playing. Let's do that before they actually look at the teams themselves. I can say it's because honestly, like our team ended up doing the same thing, and I felt fucking useless as a scout in the first week because it's like, well, this stuff was working out so well in scrims. You don't have to adapt specifically for EDG and all this stuff, you know. So our first week was also we went 1 and 2, you know. We only beat the Brazilians. And I feel like every single tournament, European teams do this. They have a full sense of security from scrims that are way that they are playing as the best, and then second week they actually adapt. You know,
Wait.
that.
The thing is, I think the way G2 and IG are playing is the best right now, and it is like the most ideal way to play the game. So I don't get why you think they'll improve, because I feel like they already have the correct read. Where SKT is like picking shit like
because
Azir.
when you get to this level. And this is something that you guys didn't realize when you were getting shit-stomped by Fnatic at MSI. When you get to this level, we also didn't realize that when you were the only team that didn't upset in groups versus LGD and stuff. When you get to this level, the adaptations you make versus specific teams matter a lot, because your team is going to be able to execute if you wipe out what makes this team so good, right? So what made EDG so good back then that we didn't bother doing the first week? The meta called for Nami, Karma, all of this stuff at the time in bot lane and support, right? But the way that EDG actually got all their strength, because there was this fucking meme about ClearLove that pisses me off to this day, that he wasn't just so fucking good, that he was the sole fucking carrier of this team. But honestly, if you watched the games, which I was being paid to do at the time, Mako set up basically every good thing that ClearLove was doing. So if you denied him champions that he could set up on, then despite the fact that the meta was like Nami, Carmen stuff, if you just banned out Alistair Tom, which is what we did in the second week, they shut down. They didn't actually know how to play, and then you saw the Tigers do this as well in their playoff series versus them. Like that was how you beat them. Once you shut down this aspect, when you have players on the caliber of Forgiven, say, or Yankos, say, versus matchups that have now been muted in their favor, you can really carry this through in a way that you can't in like. If you have worse players, if you have players that aren't of the caliber to qualify for these kinds of championships, once you actually start looking at what makes these teams tick and what made them qualify for these championships, and once you neuter those, you do have players that are on the level that can capitalize on this in a really big way. And I think every time we come into these tournaments, we fall into the habit of thinking we're just going to see League of Legends played at the absolute optimal. No one is ever playing League of Legends at absolute optimal in terms of teams, and everyone has their comforts. Even Faker has his comforts. Faker has his champions that he can 1v9, and he has his champions that he can't 1v9.
Okay.
You know, like that's why he was 8th, 7th place at one point. I think this matters a lot, and I think Europe historically has been really good at adapting. In a way that China hasn't, for example. And this is why Europe ended up playing spoiler to China a lot, which is something that we might forget because IG ended up winning the World Championships. We've played spoiler to RNG there. We've played spoiler to World Elite the year before in 2015 when EDG was like absolute maximum hype. Fnatic just straight up 3-0'd them. We're really fucking good at adapting over the course of the tournament, understanding where our weaknesses are and where the enemy team's weaknesses is. So if they lose to SKT, I imagine it's going to be early on because they're cocky about certain things that are working out really fucking well in scrims, and then they'll get their shit slapped in a bit, and they'll be like, all right, back to the drawing board a bit. And we've seen from their shows actually that the way G2 approach the drawing board is actually very, very good. Like they do it as a team, and they have so many ideas between each player, and you'd expect this because they're all so talented, but so many super teams aren't able to converse in the way that G2 are able to do. So I have every faith in them once we hit the knockout stage to be almost a different G2 than they were before. It wouldn't be the first time G2 themselves were like that, even last Worlds and then the MSI versus WE, like they were like a different team from group stage to the playoff bracket, you know? So I'd expect them to lose early on and then to really belt up everyone's expectations once they reach the knockout stage, if they reach it. But obviously I think that they will, so.
I think that's an interesting point he makes there, actually, about the fact that in G2, not only do they come up with all these ideas, but that's the point. Everyone can contribute. And because they're all on the same page, that's why you can execute such weird shit, because every single person has a way that they could do it. They're open to it. They're not going to say no immediately. One of the reasons I think most super teams fail in League of Legends is you make the super team, and then what you find out when it fails is, oh, that guy wasn't a super team player. He just looked like it when he had all the setup, and he had a jungler, and he had a fucking support, or he had some shot caller that told him what to do. And when you put him in a team with other star players, he's just a fucking okay player. Like, he's not a great player. So that's an interesting detail to make.
Besides, Loco, you opened this. Besides, Loco, you opened all of this by saying that Korea is just way worse at adapting, and then you said the reason SKT is going to do well is because they adapt. So, like, I mean, I agreed with you the first time. I don't agree with you the second time. I don't think SKT will adapt. I think SKT were good at early game once when Marwin was their captain, because this guy's a fucking Renekton Rumble 2 trick, you know? Like, obviously, that guy is going to play with a bit more early to mid-game focus in mind. I don't think they've ever been anything but a late-game team since then. They've been a very good late-game team, but they've always been a late-game team, and the meta has left them behind for way more significant periods than the 2-week gap you will get with group stage and playoffs. That's just not going to happen.
I don't think it's reasonable to expect SKT to suddenly change into an early game team. That wasn't my point at all. And regarding Korea not being able to adapt, I meant as in when the whole big shift that we talked about, where the game shifted away from vision and controlled team fights and getting to the game in a certain state and winning off of that state, changed to fundamentally getting leads in lane, taking higher percentage chance plays instead of not taking those higher percentage chance plays early and then just taking it in mid game where you're better off in a team fight. Like, Korea failed to adapt to that, but I think SKT will adapt within the tournament to the teams that are there and to the kind of strategy that teams are able to put out. And I don't think G2 can be an infinite fountain of creative strategies. Like, there's a limitation to it, and once you've seen something once and once you experience something, they'll be much better to handle it. So
I'll
also,
give you a counterpoint, Loco. I've got a quick counterpoint for you, because one thing that I think also that people who are bigging up SK Telecom this tournament have overlooked is because they like to play late game and they like to scale, they aren't picking the same champions that IG and G2 are going to pick in the draft. So that's actually a problem for them, because that means you can't choose all your bans on their fucking main pick. You have to ban out the power picks as well.
If they go shit like Azir,
there's another aspect.
If they go shit like Azir, like early in the tournament, they're going to get their
Sandra comps that they love to play around Faker or have fucking Khan on Victor or some other stupid shit. Like, these aren't going to be good moves.
I think there's two lessons that SKT must learn. You can't draft so late game like you did in LCK, and also playing around Khan is not going to be the way, and Khan needs to adapt to not... Like, Khan is going to need to adapt. I think Khan is going to face off against top laners that are much like the top laners he had to face to get to win LCK were Rascal and Sword. I mean, I'm sorry to all the Griffin fans out there, but these were not top class top laners that Khan had to face. Like, he's gonna face off versus much better top laners, Wonder, Dashai. So initially, I think these are the two things that's gonna bite SKT in the ass: drafting way too much for late game and not expecting the kind of pressure that's going to come from top side of the map. But once they wise up to this stuff, I do think SKT will be one of the best teams in the tournament.
And you think they'll break these tendencies that they have done for years in the span of group stage and playoffs, right?
I think no.
What you're saying.
No, what I'm saying. Wait, okay, better.
Yeah.
Okay, I think they'll do exactly what they do, where they lose early and they adapt enough and they win the tournament. If you go by history, veteran, that is the history of SKT.
But if I go by history, they were still permanently spamming late game in their 2017 run.
They definitely adjusted. They definitely
which was
adjusted
the last. They didn't.
Bit.
They were playing fucking Gangplank and shit in the finals. What are you talking about, Loco? They did not adjust. They were permanent late game.
I remember.
This is why the RNG series versus them was so close.
I remember
they were a permanent late game team the whole time.
That's why Faker had to play Gallo every game.
No, yeah, that was their adaptation from quarters to semis. Yes, they adapted terribly from semis to finals, but they did adapt from quarters to semis.
Yeah, but they didn't shift away from late game focus.
And that's
they never.
I don't think they're not going to.
Faker, you were just
the veteran. They're not going to shift away from late game focus.
Yeah,
they will still be a late game team, but it'll be a little bit less. Like, they're not going to suddenly become early game, mid game team, but it'll be less. They will definitely adapt. I mean, go by history. SKT adapts enough to win the tournament or make finals. That's the history of SKT. If you're going to go by history.
There also was no IG and G2 level team.
There also was no turret plating or rubber banding back then.
There wasn't. You're literally saying go by history. If you go by history, that's the history.
I am going by history, but they make it to the finals of these tournaments, but they make it on the exact same late game style that you think is bad right now.
I agree with all that, but you also have to agree, if it is going by history, SKT will make finals and they'll make enough adaptations within their style.
History is. Like, I know that you're dumb enough to think this, but most of your audience isn't dumb enough to think this. You're saying that just because they make the finals in tournaments, they will make the finals on this tournament. I'm saying that the reason that they were able to make the finals was meta dependent, and they are terrible at adapting to the meta, and we have no reason to think that they will adapt to the meta that this tournament is going to bring in the next few weeks, also going by history. Because if you see what they were doing back then, it didn't change away from any of these focuses that you are flaming them about. Your points are absolutely correct, and then your conclusion is terrible.
No,
I'll wrap this up for you. Here's the problem I see with this whole scenario, and this is actually why I found it very confusing. Like, I hope I've made this clear. As soon as Griffin got stomped in that LCK final, the first thing I thought was like, right, we'll forget Korea, and that was the one hope that Griffin was actually going to be good. Because I'll tell you something that is absolutely obvious about this SK Telecom team. It's because they changed every single player except Faker. And because on paper, they got players in every lane who were supposed to be among the best at every role. Who the fuck would take that set of players, only one remaining player from the old styles that Veteran was talking about, who would take that fresh set of players and say, why don't I just teach these guys to play exactly the same way the old team play? No coach would do that. If you had all the players you have now, you'd do like what G2 is. You'd go, right, well, let's be the best early game team. Let's be the team where no one knows what lane we're going to play through. Let's flex everything all over the map. You do exactly what G2 and IG do. So what that tells me, Loco, I have to speculate here, is I imagine SK Telecom tried some of that shit in scrims.
No, they tried being an early game.
Yeah, exactly, and it didn't work. That's the point. And so they didn't go, well, we'll work on that on the side and get it up to it. No, they just went away from it and they found something that worked. The problem they have is, though, they would never have thought this is the solution if they'd have had IG in their region. If they'd have had these teams that could 1-3-1 all day against them, they wouldn't have tried that. That's the point. So basically their problem is they went down a divergent evolution chain, and unfortunately for them, they're like a fucking chicken that was living in a world with no dinosaurs, and there's a fucking T-Rex coming from the other world into their world. Like, then there's nothing they can do, Local. Like, I still think, here's the mad thing. If SK Telecom really could do this, I don't think any team could do this. If they could really assess that it's going to be so hard to win and say, right, is there any other option? They have the players to play any style in theory, but they've already tried that, in my opinion. I do not think they're going to veer away from it just because it's like we lose game one at this tournament. If you look at Koreans, I think they'll just keep doing the same shit, personally.
I think they'll make enough adjustments where they have to realize, okay, we need to weather this storm and we need to tighten up our early game. We need to tighten up our mid game and get to that late game phase. I actually do think it's more likely SKT finishes second. I think SKT can adapt enough to G2, but they can't adapt enough to IG. I think IG is way too fucking strong. I think IG is way too individually talented for SKT to weather their storm, but SKT will be able to weather G2's storm later down the tournament. So there's no SKT in finals if they meet IG in semis, but there is SKT in finals if they meet G2 in semis.
I think the way the Shy plays is way more punishing the way Khan plays will get punished way more by the Shy than by Wander, I think. Yes. So I actually think that they match up worse versus IG.
That's the thing. When we asked Kelsie, so when we asked Kelsie if it was her, how does she think IG will get attacked by SK Telecom? Because as she was saying, much like G2 did at Worlds, most people think, oh, fuck, the solo laners are too good, just attack the bot lane, which I actually think would be the worst move ever. SK Telecom should just play themselves through top lane. Like, Khan is only good for that at this level. Yeah, if you put him in LCK, obviously you can play other shit. At this level, you have to just hope he wins top lane or goes even. So you may as well just give him all the jungle pressure. You don't need any resource in bot lane anyway. That is actually your best chance if you're SK Telecom. Not to play through bot lane and think you're going to get to 40 minutes. It ain't going to happen. Like, why the fuck would you want to leave Khan alone with the Shy for 20 minutes of 1v1 diving and then Ning's coming up every 7 minutes to gank him? It's going to be a nightmare. Just look at, like he said there, go and watch that game. I think it was game 2 that G2 played against IG at Worlds. Wonder just experiences what it's like to get camped with the Shy in your lane. It's a fucking nightmare, mate. He just dies about 8 times in a row. It's mental. Like, he couldn't do anything. And by the way, this is a guy who's used to being like an amazing 1v1 top laner. He found out it's a different world when it's like that. They just camp you all day long. So I'm not hating on SK Telecom. Maybe they still do something amazing I can't imagine and win the tournament. But it doesn't look likely. Anyway, let's switch it up now and let's ask Veteran. Obviously, I know with Kelsie we said don't talk about this, but obviously the memes demand it, right? What will happen when Team Liquid plays G2 Veteran?
Say the line. Say the line, Veteran.
I mean, do you remember... did you watch the Fongvu series? Like, I'm asking Fo in this because I know you didn't watch the Fongvu series.
I watched
We actually did an episode on it, Veteran, and basically I'll tell you this, is I even said it on the show. The series that I saw TL play against Fongvu, if you looked at Reddit, you saw 3-0, no problem. This series showed massive problems for Team Liquid. They could not, literally, I'm not joking, they couldn't fucking beat a team from Vietnam in early game fights and skirmishes. Like, Fongvu was getting advantages and getting kills all over the place. So I have to say that series, I don't want to judge them on one series, but if they come in that form, they will get stomped at this tournament. I actually thought they were going to be a good team, but that almost killed my hope.
Better. Before we go into you versus NA, I'm assuming you watched some of the Flash Wolves games.
Well, only at the play-ins. I didn't watch them on their own region.
Do you think lowly enough about NA and TL where do you think we won't even be fourth? Do you think we'll be fifth?
Well, Flash Wolves outplace him basically.
Do you think we won't make top 4?
I mean, Flash Wolves are going to try to match you the exact place that you guys try to play to your strengths for. So it's a difficult one, but I honestly haven't seen enough of Flash Wolves to say. So I'm not going to try to make that kind of claim. Except it's going to be a very. I think it's going to be a very bloody bot lane.
Yeah, here's the thing, Loco. I wouldn't claim that Team Liquid will be worse than Flash Wolves because I don't think Flash Wolves is a good team. But I will say, first of all, they have their own player who's a carry top laner. And secondly, they love team fights. So they can win either way against Team Liquid. So it's not impossible they can get an upset. I wouldn't personally put them past it. I'm not going to hate on them that much. I think Team Liquid's all right. But anyway, Vetcher, what do you think about the G2 Team Liquid matchup?
Yeah, so the reason I bring up the Fengvu series is that, okay, for me the Fengvu series always comes down to the swap that Fengvu made in the first game, because it was an off-tempo swap and they ended up ahead on the map because Team Liquid's response to it was so bad. Like, it was just absolutely terrible. And it's like, if you're at the tournament in this state, where you don't understand absolute basic fundamentals. Fengfu are messing up these fundamentals against them, but their need to react to everything an opponent does is so fucking ingrained in them as a mentality that the same mentality that the same mentality that kind of turns the region into a 5v5 region though. That I don't see you making the kind of adaptive changes you would need to make in the span of a group stage. So I would assume that they would lose. If it wasn't a best of one, I would just straight up say that one, and they do actually still have they have a phenomenal mid laner. I've been one of the few people who for years has been saying that Jensen's better than Bjergsen. I still believe that to be true.
Blasphemy.
I think that they have the best North American.
By the way, Loco, just as an aside, I actually did do a tweet. I think it was last year where I did a tweet and I just said Jensen has been better than Bjergsen every second for the last 2 years, and Bjergsen even did a passive aggressive like on the tweet, like like dick, and it's like even he was like fucking had to come back at it. So
be gone.
They both have flaws, but I think Jensen is the better player. If you put a gun to my head and asked me which one of those two I'd take Jensen. But they also have one of the best. I mean, they have the best North American player. I think that's pretty much uncontested now, unless you go back to the old Cloud9 roster and Meteor before his time was doing really fucking phenomenally. So maybe you could make a historical thing, but I think there's basically no dispute now that Double is being through so many metas and being so good at. I mean, he dipped in season 3, season 4, but he really came back hard, and it's very rare to see someone have that kind of renaissance so late on in their career. But Double was able to pull it through, and then topside, if you're spending that much money on a player, then I hope he's fucking good at the very least. But honestly, I haven't really seen him be worth that much money at this point, and that's the problem because this isn't a bot lane centric meta anymore, which is what a lot of these teams qualified in. They qualified in a bot lane centric meta, and Team Liquid are absolutely no exception to the rule. And this is why I pointed at Flash Wolves, because when I was watching them, they appear to be a pretty bot lane centric team. And so the thing I can predict for
they are TL with a carry top laner. That's what Flash Wolves is.
It will be a very bloody bot lane is what I think is going to happen in that series. But I don't have enough of an opinion of their top laner to tell you if he is going to take over the game versus Impact, except to tell you that Zeros definitely could, and Zeros is just Zeros reminds me of Huni when he first came to Europe, because he's just making so many aggressive decisions that are just bad decisions, but sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't, and I have to admire the balls regardless to keep going for these kinds of plays. And I do remember that last year he actually did match up pretty decently against Wonder, so maybe Zeros can step up when it matters, but obviously he's not a factor anymore. But Impact couldn't really handle it at some points, even if he played out the mid game decently. Zealous' play was a big reason why they were able to get ahead in the map. They just couldn't land a fucking skill shot to save their life. And it was really annoying to watch. Like, I remember there was one team fight around Baron where I was just counting how many Qs the Rise was missing. It was just absolutely insane. They could have easily 3-0'd that series if their players were at least decent at their champions, you know?
Well,
and versus this kind of thing. Imagine putting that against G2, though, who are in control of the map on correct decisions. You know, imagine that. And imagine you have a protracted best of 5 against G2. They take one game maybe maximum because they have good players, as I've just outlined. But even then, their good players are in the wrong positions. So, and when it comes to jungling, I mean, it's xMiffy versus Yankos versus a Ning, who is like really hyper focused on his team's system of jungle right now as well. And Clid is like, I mean, I think Clid is a tier below. Well, I think SKT's jungle system in general is a tier below both G2 and IG's for the reasons I've already outlined. But still, I wouldn't really trust xMiffy versus that. Even though xMiffy has a lot of pedigree as being one of the most intelligent junglers in North America, it's the last 2 words of that part that you know, give big reason to worry, because he's never had to face a jungle system like this, and especially not one that is so aggressive, and especially not one that will be so aggressive towards the side of the map that they haven't really had to rely on despite the money that they don't.
We don't have to talk a lot about this because I actually agree with you. I think Fengbu Buffalo versus TL, the thing that makes me so fucking scared is Fengbu Buffalo I think they had some of the worst fucking macro. They were winning fights and they weren't able to take Dragon. They were winning fights and going in Baron and then getting 3 people killed because they didn't realize they couldn't do Baron. I think the other teams in this tournament are going to be mechanically better than Fengbu Buffalo, win fights versus TL more often than Fengbu Buffalo, and actually have the macro to convert those fight leads and one fight.
You mean Team Liquid were winning fights, right? Just to clarify.
No. Fengbu Buffalo were winning fights versus Team Liquid. What do you mean?
Fengbu Buffalo were making picks. They never won a fight because they are just too bad at their champions.
There were times where they would win. They would kill TL in a fight 3-0, and they went to Baron. They started Baron without a tank, and then TL regged and then chased them off of Baron. Early game, Fengbu Buffalo won Dragon fights, and they didn't reset, and they stayed on the map, and then TL regged, and then came back, and then Fengbu were behind on tempo, and they had to reset. They didn't win more fights than TL did.
So this is the thing, because this is the thing. I agree with you that they were on the map last versus Team Liquid, but I don't agree with you that they didn't have tempo, because it's about more than just that. Like, even though that they would do this, Team Liquid would then play to their weak side. So even though they have extended on the map too far, they have been delayed coming back on the map versus Team Liquid. Fengbu would still be ahead on the map because Team Liquid just don't understand how to play around their strengths at this point, or how to play.
We don't have to go into detail. We don't have to go into detail about what is tempo or what side they're playing on. But what I want to say is, I'm so fucking scared for TL because what they showed versus Fengbu Buffalo, if they have the same kind of showing versus IG, SKT, G2, it is not going to stand up. I think the only thing we can be hopeful for TL is C9 played bad in play-ins, G2 played bad in play-ins.
Hopefully they play to left the opponent.
And they level up, and they level up, and they have a better showing. That is literally the only thing you can be hopeful for, because the performance shown versus Fengbu Buffalo is extremely, extremely fucking worrying.
For everyone in the chat, just like to clarify, because tempo gets thrown around a lot, like tempo just means you're a decision ahead of the opponent. And obviously the easiest way to get a decision ahead is to get your backstop first, which is why so many coaches will be so stringent on having to reset for tempo. And the thing is that Team Liquid did reset for tempo, and they were still so bad about how they played the map, they were still a decision behind.
And so that's decision making and tempo, that's separate. But there were times where TL should not have been ahead in tempo. When Fengbu Buffalo wins a team fight, they should be the ones ahead in tempo because they reset first, but they actively chose not to reset and stay on the map and farm and allow TL to get those free resets and allow TL to get back on the map.
I agree decision making is like a separate category than tempo, but if you just imagine that there are 2 lists of like the decisions they should make on the map, it's like Fengbu are here and this is where Team Liquid are, despite the fact that over here on the reset thing, Team Liquid were ahead. Fengvu have now skipped ahead because Team Liquid have like pathed incorrectly or something, or they pathed to the wrong side of the map. So now they're in a situation where there's still a decision behind Fengvu anyway. That was what we were seeing a lot in that series, and that's a loss in tempo. Like a bad decision making. Wait. Bad decision making caused that loss in tempo, but also if you don't reset properly, that's also bad decision making. So that whole thing is a whole non sequitur. Like it's just about being a decision ahead, and that factors way more than just resets into the game.
I think this is semantics. Let's actually talk about other parts that matter.
This isn't semantics.
Okay, this
You're
isn't
just disagreeing on terminology there.
Yeah, let's go into the other parts. So we covered G2 versus SKT a little. How do you think G2 will fare versus IG?
This is the big test. If they draft like they did before, they don't fare well. So I actually do believe. So again, I brought up already that when I was watching how Wonder was playing out their final playoff series, the way that he was playing with his jungle is absolutely the kind of thing that you would need to if you just want to match IG straight up, right? So that gives me a lot of confidence in them being able to do this. You have Rookie versus Caps. I think this is potentially where you would see a weakness when it came to G2 more than their top section. So like I know that you guys have talked a lot about the top section of AGB being such a huge strength for them, and we've already covered Wonder Yankos. Caps, I mean, I know Caps won MVP and all of that, and Caps is still a phenomenal mid laner. But he has had some inconsistent games, including in the playoffs, where he wasn't necessarily even called to like carry these, but he was still making really weird laning decisions. And I wonder how that's going to go against a player of Rookie's caliber if he makes the same decisions. And the second reason that I have to be a bit worried about this is because last year, when he was up against Rookie, when he was up against Scout even, there were matchups that should go a lot better for him, that he should play in completely... And I imagine he would ordinarily play in completely different ways than I saw him play them out at the Worlds tournament. And Caps ended up being, like, particularly in the EDG series, ended up being like a drag on the rest of Fnatic, and Whippo actually had to step up and become the big focal point for them. And because Caps has this kind of, if we want to talk about history, versus the really top tier international players, even if he gets the really strong winning matchups, not necessarily playing it out properly, that does give me cause for concern, because at the playoffs, when he was versus Nukeduck, I mean, he wasn't taking anywhere near the level of opportunities that he was being granted by Nukeduck. And this is also with the fact that G2 kind of play, or when in that series at the very least, they were playing like with their bot section rotating to mid to give him de facto pressure. Even then, you could still kind of tell that there were a lot of opportunities that he had where he didn't necessarily need his bot lane to get dragged up, that he was missing out on, because Nukeduck wasn't really playing too well either in that series. And that gives me a lot more cause for concern than the top section, because I've seen that they are making the adaptations towards their top section play that they should do, that they need to do if they want to match IG.
How relevant do you think are what people are saying about IG and G2 match, or IG G2 match before, and then, or not IG and G2, Caps and Rookie matched up before in finals, and Caps didn't do very well. Do you think Caps leveled up enough by this tournament? Do you think the teammate?
I mean, yeah. So I think I just answered that by saying that is my concern about how he will perform versus these kinds of, because of the examples of Worlds of when he met Rookie. But
circumstances has really changed though.
So that would be my second point. Like my first point would be that like I wouldn't be so worried if it wasn't for the fact that he had the same issue versus Scout. And then because that indicates it's not just, okay, I'm against Rookie, oh my god, and now he's being against Rookie, now he can safely compartmentalize that. This seems to be like something else entirely. I don't talk to Caps, so I can't say what this is. But the second thing is that, yeah, the circumstances have changed in terms of that he has a much better team now, but he also had a much better teams in the playoffs where he was still showing some kinds of weaknesses. He wasn't really pushing his matchup to the limits that we have seen Caps push his matchups to. And you could argue that he didn't need to, specifically, but then that puts him severely out of sync with the rest of G2 in terms of how they are improving and to why we have such a high opinion of Wonder right now, you know? And this is the kind of limit testing that like Rookie has done his entire career. So what is he missing out on by not actually pushing his matchups the way that I would ordinarily imagine he would? And even then there were just some bad movements that he was making in that series until they put him on Pike bot lane. So that's my concern. Bot lane is kind of, I wouldn't say whatever. I just think that the system that G2's bot lane has in terms of Mickey's roams and Mickey's place in the team, and even Perks' place in the team, obviously you've seen that they can do funnel and stuff right now. I'm not sure if they are planning to pull it out. I think if they pull it out in the best of one stage, please. Just close out like what could be a free win. Just pull out your cheese strap for those wins. You know, those are the wins where you just want to make sure that enemy is not going to like get the lucky win. And so just pull out the fucking funnel or whatever for those ones. So that they have a lot of fidelity on them, but the big thing is how they use Mickey X and the fact that Perks frees up a lot of pressure for Mickey X to do his roams, and they have a really good system of playing with jungle support when Perks is able to do that. And I don't think teams other than North America are going to contest bot lane, that all Flash Wolves, I guess, are going to contest bot lane that much. I don't think talking about that bot lane in isolation is going to be too much of an issue because I don't think it'll be a defining factor. It'll just be how Mickey X plays out. That will be a defining factor, particularly in the mid game.
Oh, Dorian, any final topics you want to hit?
Not really. I think we covered a lot there.
Okay. What? Oh, veteran final predictions for overall tournament.
Yeah, give us like your top 4. Just give us your order and a quick reason for each.
Okay, so G2 are their own worst enemy, and I have every faith in those players and the stuff. So I'll put G2 number 1. Then number 2, I'd put IG. They have some exceptionally talented players on their roster. They have been very single-minded about the thing that you should be.
Actually, as a quick side topic, let me just ask you a quick question. What did you think? Okay, so in the Kelsie section, we had a discussion where we were talking about the Shy over the aspect of like, you know, like does he overreach? Like, does he play too abusive and too arrogantly? Like, what do you think? Because you have a different perspective on the idea of like pushing your limits and stuff. So, what do you think on that topic?
Yeah, I mean that's what makes him good, and I agree with your point that you were saying about it. It's the reasoning that I gave for why I thought Leader was going to be so good back in December. You know, like that kind of player is going to be the kind of player who's going to know all of the limits of his champion because he's constantly testing them, and there's no hesitation in his head about that, even when he's wrong. But then he learns that he is wrong very fast compared to everyone else. I do
basically
think
what Caps did at mid, right, in the past.
Yeah, that's what Caps did. That's why I compare Leader to Caps. The thing about the Shy in a competitive sense, I think Kelsey's point that they kind of expect the Shy to be able to hold a significant more amount of pressure than he really should be able to champion on champion. I think that's a big deal, but I think that's mitigated somewhat by the fact that he basically like lives with Ning at this point. So I obviously think that he's an arrogant player. I think that most of the best players are arrogant players. And the Wonder versus the Shy is like the big matchup that I think people should want to see coming into this tournament. It's obviously the matchup that I want to see, but I think if you're a North American fan, there should still be a matchup that you're really excited to see, even though these don't involve your team.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I interrupted you on IG there. So where were you going after that? IG number 2. They got really strong solo players.
SKT. Yeah, SKT number 3. I mean, I have no.
Just as an aside, I know, Loco, one of the reasons, I get it, right? Because of the history in your brain. It's a problem with human minds, by the way. Humans always look for patterns and think patterns will continue. It's why there's I don't know if you know this, there's a real story right now. A famous game you can play in a pub is you go up to someone and what you do is, this is a thing they used to do in bars in America to hustle people. What you do is you show someone, you go, hey, look at this. You get a coin and you flip it, right? And the genius is this, Loco. You wait until the time that you flip it, and the first 10 times it's all heads. And then you turn to the guy there and you tell him, I bet you 60-40 odds that it's tails next. Now, if he takes the bet over a long run, you win because he's giving you better odds than 50-50, yet the odds of the next one being tails are still 50-50. The joke there is you do it a million times. So the time it goes like 5 tails, you just don't bother betting with that guy. And the point is the people who see, fucking hell, 10 heads in a row, especially someone who's had like one pair, is going to think, oh, it's got to be heads again. Surely, look, it was 10 in a row. Like, that's like a fallacy in how human brains work. So the point I'm making here is, I know to you, it can't be right. Like, even if SK Telecom doesn't win, they've got to be second, right? I'll say this. I'll give you an approach I have to making predictions, which a lot of analysts don't like to do. A lot feel you should hedge and you should never like take someone who's considered a legend and bet against them. In my opinion, what you do is this. If you really believe something that seems unusual, other people disagree, you still go with it. And then what happens is, if you are completely wrong, say SK Telecom wins this tournament, they do it all through bot lane, they win late game team fights, no one can get anything done against them early. I have no problem saying, right, my entire read on League of Legends for this tournament was wrong. They did something I could never have expected. They played in a different way. Cool, I was wrong. Being right means nothing in that context. So I think it's perfectly fine if Veteran really thinks they're not even going to be top 2 to say that, of course.
I mean,
it's better to be right and then actually show it later than just gamble with every other pleb going, oh, how can I pick against SK Telecom?
He should pick the team he thinks is going to go first, second, third, like regardless of what other people think.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
what he's doing.
Go ahead.
That was like a really roundabout way of saying that Loco goes for results-based analysis, because it does come down to that. Like, he just cares about whether it lands or heads or tails. He didn't care about how SKT actually got it to land heads.
I literally talked about how they would win, or like why they think would win. I don't think it was result-based analysis at all.
Yeah, it was.
I literally
you think okay, but they were permanently playing towards late game in there, and we've already discussed why that's a terrible way to play.
And I told you why they would weather the storm. I'm not saying they're gonna win because of late game. I'm telling you why
they will weather the storm. You said they will weather the storm because in the meta where late game was actually good, they were able to play late game.
So in this meta,
how will they weather the storm? Then go on, tell me, how will they weather the storm?
Play proactive early enough, contest things early enough, rely on 5-on fighting early enough to actually not fall behind enough where you can get to late game.
They will suddenly become an early game team?
I think they can do it in the mid game. I think they can do it in the mid game. I think what is it? They can lose early game and still contest teams in 5-on-5 mid game.
What would they change about their mid game then?
Be more proactive around Rift. I think their proactivity around Dragon is good. One thing that they do is they fall behind in gold, and they're still able to contest teams at Dragon fights. The one thing that they'll need to change is actually contesting teams around Rift Herald and making sure Con doesn't blow up. Those are the things that they're going to change.
I think what SK Telecom will do is they'll just lock in Cassiopeia and just tilt them. The old memes are the best ones. Remember that one? That was the old theory on how to beat Koreans.
Oh, by the way, because I imagine you're saying that because you want to wrap up really fast. I just want to say the reason why I've got that. Yeah, the reason why I have that as like this is because SKT, if we do want to go on historical stuff, are historically really fucking bad in group stage. And as a result,
that's exactly what I said. Like, they will lose in groups.
I also think that G2 are going to lose their first games, right?
And so we both think G2 and SKT are somehow going to lose.
We're looking at a situation where it's potentially IG first and SKT fourth, and it's SKT face off against IG, and I think IG will abuse that, and so SKT won't make it to the finals.
That is a scenario I think that can happen. If SKT has to face IG in a best of 5 first, I think SKT will lose. My 4 is IG, SKT, G2, TL. I think if G2 or SKT, if they don't face off versus each other and they face IG first, we're robbed of a best of 5 that we should be seeing.
Wait a second, Loco. We will end this segment, but I'll give you the last word, okay? Except Venture can, if he's got a really good point.
I want the guest to have the last word.
No, because he's already made his point. Don't be an idiot, mate. I'm actually following the conversation. I know you just sit there thinking of what you want to say, but I'm actually following the conversation. Here's the point, right? Since you pick G2 to come under SK Telecom and IG, give me your side of that. Like, why will SK Telecom be ahead of G2 Local? What's your reason for that?
What do you mean? So G2 puts people in uncomfortable situation, and people fail at finding the solution to those uncomfortable situations very often. That's why G2 is able to win. If you're put in those situations enough, that uncomfortable situation is not uncomfortable anymore. If you see someone keep putting people in that situation, you'll figure out a way to deal with that situation. I don't think SKT is stupid where they face the same situation. Holy shit, we lost. Holy shit, we lost. Holy shit, we lost. At a point, they'll adapt to it and they'll be able to get to the next stage, which is team fighting, and SKT will come out ahead.
So by that logic, then, why don't you actually get better and better at arguing with me and start beating me?
I beat you all the time. You just yell loudly, and what is it?
Actually, if anyone watches, if I can, I let the other person talk. I try not to make two people be talking. That's another rule of talk shows that we don't need to make explicit. Anyway, that's the end of our segment. We've gone into all the topics necessary with Veteran. We even let him flex a little bit in the regions he doesn't follow as much. And by the way, for anyone who's actually dumb enough to not realise this, you're not actually, I know we joke with Loco in this sense, but you're not actually catching Veteran out if you're like, you didn't even watch the quarterfinals of LPL. Yeah, he doesn't pretend to. He actually will openly say, no, I'll watch like the final or whatever. Like, he's not pretending to watch every region. I know, by the way, the reason I'm just saying this is I'm just going to call everyone else out. Like I said on that episode in the past, Loco, where there's a lot of LCS casters who just have a mate who watches LCK who tells them half the shit, or they ask the other LCK caster. Veteran actually does a novel concept that a lot of people could learn from, which is he only presents himself as an expert about one region and then just tries to know everything about that region. A lot of people are so dumb, they're still all trying to pretend they watch all 5 major regions and know everything. That's the stupidest angle ever. You've literally done the opposite of branding there. That is actually the worst approach you could take unless you want to just be a generic caster. So anyway, that was just an aside. That's the end of this segment. Still wait there a second, Veteran, just so you can like put the screen up and switch over.
All right,
thanks.
I just want to say, the fact that people pretend this is why Kelsie actually ended up watching every single region for the year she did content.
Yeah. The sad thing is she didn't realise they were all lying.
Yeah,
exactly.
no, she didn't until like a year and then she didn't realise they were all lying.
This is why, if anyone ever saw, I once had a Reddit comment. I think I made a Facebook post about it where I basically went off on all the plebs because I used to get people, right, where if someone said, wow, can't believe Kelsie watches that region, someone would always go, well, it's her job. And I basically outlined in this Facebook post how everything she was doing was in no way the expectation of what her job should be. And how she'd essentially given her whole life to the logistical impossibility of trying to watch every region of League of Legends. Like, nobody can even do it. That's why it's hilarious that people pretend. Like, you can't do it. That's why if you ask me, I'll tell people my method for watching a VOD in 5 minutes and which games to skip. And, you know, like, I totally will be open with it as well. So all you fakers and studio gangsters out there pretending that you watch it, just be glad you're in the nice, warm environment of the LCS studio where you don't have someone like me, the big bad wolf, who come in and blow your motherfucking little pig hot down. So just be glad about that. Anyway, that's the end of this segment. Hold for a second, put the screen up. Let's go to the third guy and talk absolute bollocks about SK Telecom.
Thanks for being on, Better. All right.
Right, so we're here for the third segment. Bottom of the 4th innings or whatever you fucking idiots that don't know what cricket is thinks a sport because your dad just took you. Yeah, my dad took me to watch a bunch of shite when I was a kid. I don't stay watching it now. I've grown up, you know, possibly. Anyway, right. Our guest for this last section is Atlus, who, interestingly, Loco, actually has an angle on this world, which is why, if you notice how I structured the episode, I tended to keep it focused on the team that the person comes from the region, and then we flexed the topics into the different aspects that we could do. And if you notice, I didn't always ask your opinion on it because it's something we can ask later. So what I'm building up to here is, even though people will know Atlus is a caster for the LCK, because he's not at MSI right now. We know they only ever let one person come from LCK at any one time because of the way that the whole infrastructure works there. Shout out to the person who is still gone, but your bullshit days still remain. Anyway, the joke I was going to make, okay, but it's a serious point, is Atlus also in the past did work in the LPL, right?
Yeah, I did.
So he actually does have,
that, but
he does have some basis in other regions as well. He's not just someone who only watches LCK. So Atlus, the point I was going to make, sorry, I forgot. Before the episode, I'll quickly make this point anyway, is someone actually linked me, Loco. This is mental. Because you know the problem with talk shows is, like, because it can last like 3 hours long, it's hard enough to remember on one talk show every point you ever made. You definitely can't remember, you know, like if I asked you right now, who even was on episode 7 of Listen Loco and what were the main topics, I wouldn't blame you. Who the fuck could remember that? Probably no one, right? So someone linked me an old-ass episode of Summoning Insight, right? Which was from Season 5 Worlds, where we did like a top 20 players list. You know, you remember Riot famously did that one where they put like double lift on and then not like, you know, half of the fucking Coup Tigers or whatever. So we were breaking down that list. And on the list, when we get to Rookie, I actually say on this episode, this is just pure coincidence, I'm not claiming I actually predicted this, but I actually say on the episode, the only thing that would make Rookie even sicker is if he had a fellow carry player in the top lane who had all the flex picks the same as him. I said that in 2015, Loco. That's not bad. It's a pure fluke. Obviously, I could never have known it would be the Shy and he'd come over. In fact, when they had Duke, he didn't really do that. So I will just say it's pure fluke, but I'm still taking some sort of credit. Just like blind lock. I think that's not bad. It's not bad. It's better than
I think in that same episode, you probably said something about LGD being good, though. So I don't know how.
Oh, almost certainly. Almost certainly. Put it this way, I will say that is counterbalanced by, I have no doubt, you're right, Atlas. In the same episode, I almost certainly bigged up Wayless because I once believed Froskurren, and I'll never make that mistake again.
Me too.
So
don't worry.
that's all you need to know about that one, right? I put too much stock in that one. So I've learned now, there's high risk investments, there's low risk. You got to figure out when to go for the high risk ones.
I mean, I kept believing in Wayless when he moved to PUBG. So don't worry, we've all made those mistakes.
Fair enough. So, okay, let's start out then. So our last section was with Veteran, right? And Veteran is someone who generally, obviously bigs up Europe because it's his region and certainly sees the absolute peaks of what they're possible. But he also naturally, as you saw in the episode, has like a mild bias against Korea. I wouldn't say bias in the sense that he literally doesn't talk about, but he just basically thinks that Korea is good but gets overhyped. And he generally thought that for a long time. So obviously it's the prime time for him to go in on SK Telecom now because they weren't even at one point the best team in Korea. So let's get on from your side of this thing, right? So me and Loco, we don't watch every LCK game. I'll tell you, I don't watch the bottom teams play. I ended up doing it accidentally because I had to watch a Freak play and all those at the beginning of the split. I didn't know they were supposed to be the bottom teams, obviously. So let's start out, right? Coming into this tournament, everyone on the show so far doesn't think SK Telecom's winning the tournament. Right? Are you going to change that as the overall opinion? Are you someone who has SK Telecom as the favourite for MSI?
Yeah, I tweeted about it last night. I said that SKT is going to win and Teddy's going to be the MVP. And it's mostly because, like Veteran, I have a little bit of a bias.
Sure.
And I've been watching LCK for this whole year, and we play through bot side. I don't know what everybody else is doing. Everyone's playing topside League of Legends. We've got most of our top 80 carries coming out with 32% of the damage share. I don't know how that's happening in a top-centric meta. That doesn't actually work. And I think the way that we do it, that's a lot different to other regions and why we don't see as many bottom lanes being as successful is that we use our bottom lane as a weapon, right? And we move our bottom lane around and we start fights around where the bottom lane is. And now calling it a bottom lane doesn't actually make too much sense because often it's in the mid lane if you've got an Ezreal comp and you're moving it into the mid so that you can have that 1-3-1 control throughout the mid game, and then you can transition that easily into fights around the map, right? And sometimes that can happen before and after Rift Herald. And if it happens afterwards, then often you're going to be in a deficit, which is a large point that Veteran was making earlier on, saying that SKT aren't going to be able to play fast enough, and therefore they're going to lose to these strong solo lanes that we have, right? Mm-hmm. I just don't think that anyone's going to be able to get ahead far enough over SKT to stop them from being, as a team of 5 players, just better in a 5-on-5 situation. Because Teddy is too good at League of Legends. I don't know. And this comes down to things like draft, which is why I rate G2 really highly. I think that's going to be a really fun best of 5 if that ever happens, because their draft is what makes them win games. Mm-hmm. Their ability to completely destroy Sona Tarek with a funnel comp was genius that I wasn't ready for. It blew my fucking mind. It was just amazing. And I think that if there's fumbles in the draft, that's going to be where SKT falls down. If an opposing team ever gets Rise, that's a lost draft. It's just done. The fact that 5 out of the 7 games that IG played in the playoffs, they got Rise, whether it be on Rookie or on the Shy, just means that the other 2 teams didn't know how to draft. JDG definitely didn't, but that's a gigantic fuck up. Rise is busted, just completely busted.
So, Doran, you're muted, by the way. Oh, it's not you. It's Duncan that's muted.
Oh, you're right, actually. Yeah, sorry. If you're against IG, then what are you taking out? So you taking out Rise? What else is a must take out if you draft against IG? Do you think?
I'd probably throw as many bans at the Shy as I possibly could. If he's on anything with late game
Aurelia, Jace, all the shit you see him on.
Well, actually, no. So I think Aurelia and Jace are probably things that they can deal with, right? Because Aurelia and Jace are going to win earlier on, rather than something like a Gangplank and a Vladimir that the Shy can just win on straight up in lane and then hard carry 1v9 at the end of the game. You need to get him off champions where he can just be the best and easily kill Teddy before he can actually position correctly, right? I think Vladimir is a perfect example of a champion that does that. He pulls into the back line, and Teddy's like, well, I mean, my buttons don't do anything. Unless he's playing something like Xayah and he can pop into the sky, and then everyone can actually manage to kill the Shy in the 7 seconds of untargetability that he's going to have at the late stage of the game. Like, you got to get him off champions that he can just murder everyone on, and then you're going to stand a chance, right? And I think attacking the game like that is the best way to do it. But I'm sort of going against what Veteran was saying, right? And I'm saying that this is playing around a game that will extend past 30 minutes with a relevant gold difference, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that SKT are a team that can do that.
I'm with you on that they can do it versus G2, but versus IG, I think it's going to be really hard. One thing that you talked about in LCK, the AD carries having higher amount of damage share, that's because multiple teams opt into team fighting. I think IG will definitely not opt into team fighting, and they're going to force the side lane play so much more. Aren't you afraid of kind of Khan versus the Shy with how mistake prone Khan can be and how overly aggressive he can be?
Yep. Yeah, I was watching Khan underneath, like, basically dry humping the outer top turret with exhaust ignite on Urgot in the Casper Cup. Yeah, I was there when that happened. I'm worried about Khan, and I'm especially worried because when Khan goes international, he just explodes. Like, that's been a thing. Like, trusting, King Zone has been the downfall of my ability to stay sane over the last year and a half. So that is definitely a worry. I think Clid's good enough to keep Ning down, though. I think that Ning is a weakness that IG haven't actually shown yet. And what I mean by that is that junglers always look good if their lanes are good.
He's got the 2 best solo lanes.
And he literally has the easiest game ever, right? What he needs to do is like partially babysit bot side unless they've got a priority matchup, in which case he doesn't need to go there. And otherwise, he either invades and he'll always have lane priority elsewhere, does whatever he wants, or he hard farms his jungle and no one can invade him because they always have priority everywhere else. Like, his job, he needs to do about 30% of what every other jungler has to do, and he's still going to win. So I think that if Clid and if, the solo lanes of SKT, be it, Faker versus Rookie, last time we saw that, it was super hype. It was Yasuo versus Galio last year at Rift Rivals. Somehow that matchup even happened. I don't know how IG versus SKT happens in Rift Rivals, but it did last year. And that was actually really exciting, right? I think Faker actually won in the laning phase, and then Rookie was playing Galio and smashed a team fight over and over again. And it was actually a really hype series. I think it ended with like a 4K gold lead in favor of an IG that didn't have the Shy, right? So this was a very different point, but SKT didn't have anyone except for Faker. And so now you've got the SKT Dream Team that has been built around having Faker in the mid lane, and all of these points about like the evolution of SKT and the fact that, you can't rely on them now because, this is not the same SKT, and you're exactly right. And that's the point. That's what makes them good, is because Clid joined the team and he said, we're not going to win, Faker, unless you do what I tell you. And do you know what Faker's been doing? He's been doing what he's told. That's what he's been doing. He's been playing Lissandra. He's been playing Galio. He's been playing Urgot. There is most played champions for the regular season. They're not fun. That's not having a good time. He's only recently been able to get back on things like Azir because
mainly in the playoffs, he got all the carry picks on it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's why, the damage share changed a little bit in the playoffs. And having Faker on playmakers when it fits the meta that's been the recipe for SKT's success over the last X years. That's been how they've been able to redefine League of Legends over and over and over again. And yes, that's a bit of historical bias and things are going to change here, but I think that this is the best that SKT has looked for a very long time. And that's because they finally had to invest money into making their team better. 2018 was like, well, we've got Faker, we're still going to win, guys. And then they were like, that's you need more than that. Sorry about the cat. We need more than just money in order to. So we need more than just Faker in order to win, and so they invested in all the best players in the other roles. Pseudo, arguably, I know it's Khan is definitely an.
He's still a very good player. I mean, looking in Korea, he's still one of the best tops for sure.
If he dig into the Khan situation a little bit more, he was actually not looking that hot in finals versus Sword. Like, he was trading 1-for-1, where Sword was playing, I think.
Sword
Silas
was on an uptick.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have been talking about this in a really negative way. And towards the end of the season, it wasn't actually Sword that was the main issue with Griffin. It was the rest of the players not being able to play as the same cohesive unit as they were able to against the teams in the LCK. I don't think it has a lot to do with Griffin as a team. I think it has a lot to do... has a lot to do with the other teams in the LCK finally stepping up and finally adjusting their playstyle, because 2018 was so damn humbling. They realized that Tracker's knife is gone, guys. We need to play League of Legends like China does. And so they've been scrimming Chinese teams way more than they have. I know that it's been really good to have the inside of LS throughout this season, because we know that BBQ spends a lot of their scrim time with Chinese teams. We know that when Jin Air was scrimming to try and get back into the LCK, they basically scrimmed all of the top teams from the LCK and the LPL in order to get themselves into the right form to take down a challenger team, which is a little bit sad. But they're back in the LCK, so it must have at least done something. You know, I think that this is not the same LCK region that we saw in 2018, and I'm looking forward to seeing what SKT can do to prove that and not make me look like an idiot.
Do you like their read on the meta? Do you like how they're playing stylistically?
I do, but I'm scared of it in the same way that a lot of SKT fans are, just because playing around a bot side that can carry late is something that's worked in the LCK. Whether it will work in different regions is another question mark. But word on the street, and this was something that we got a little bit late heading into the LCK final, which is why everyone was so surprised by the immense blowout that SKT performed for us. I thought that SKT was going to win, but that was sort of more on gut feeling and a little bit of recency bias. And everybody else was like, well, Griffin have just won everything and they looked really good when they were good, and now they've had lots of time to prepare. Theoretically, they should win, right? But the word on the street was that SKT were just smashing scrims against everyone. And when the LCK scrims, because we're here, geographically, we can easily scrim against LPL teams. And so the LPL meta has been slowly creeping in, because the arrogance, I guess, and this word's been thrown around a lot, and I think that misused and used correctly over this show, but the LCK as a region were definitely arrogant when it came to 2017 and earlier, because they were the best and they didn't want to waste their time, you know, scrimming other regions and things like this. But now, because, you know, the LPL are theoretically the strongest region, they've got off their high horse. It's been a bit humbled, and they've actually been able to, you know, figure out how their playstyle works in this more aggressive meta, which is why things have changed, even if they haven't necessarily changed as much as a lot of analysts have expected. Does that make sense?
Okay. Right, what about if we look at the G2 matchup for SK Telecom then? What do you think on this one? Because this is a spicy one, right?
Yeah, this is exciting. And I think that this comes down to SKT's ability to control and SKT's strength in the jungle. I think that Clid is often overlooked because he's on a team with Teddy and Faker, and then you've got Khan just being crazy, so everyone's talking about him. But Clid is ridiculously good at this game. Clid has had some of the cleanest Lee Sin ever. You know, I mean, comparing him to Flawless they're almost tied, and Flawless has done ridiculous things on that champion. But his Jarvan is incredible. His Rek'Sai is fantastic. And I think the meta is really shaped around Clid's playstyle as well as we move into Worlds. And Clid's ability to control early. If Clid can control Faker, then like I don't know what more I can say to talk about how good this guy is at controlling a game of League of Legends. Because Faker is like one of the most headstrong players, always has been and always will be in the game at the moment. And Clid is the one that managed to open his eyes. So getting that sort of respect from a player who is the embodiment of arrogance and confidence, then, I mean, I don't think you need to say more. And I think that if Clid can control the early game and Teddy smashes lane like he always does, then SKT just win. And I think that then with nullifying matchups in solo lanes, they can do well.
You know, that's actually an angle that probably has been underexplored about Faker over his whole career. Okay, so you know how one of the areas people have criticised Bjergsen over the years is they always point to him because he's the only player that was in all the lineups, as he's part of whatever their problem with jungle's been in that team for so many years. You know, like maybe he makes certain demands of the jungler, or maybe however he shot calls the jungler, or he plays around the jungler, is what led to these junglers becoming ward bots and basically just like never actually fucking playing proper jungle and invading, etc. I actually think after seeing all the different SK telecoms with all the different variants, and eventually it's just Faker at the end, I kind of think I see where you're coming from on that, because when I look at the last few years, it's easy to look at it and be like, oh, poor Faker, look, he never gets any help. But if you consider, so when we talked on that episode not that long ago, Loco, I think there's one with Papa actually about Blank as a jungler. And obviously Blank got the most hard flamed of maybe any jungler ever, because he was playing with Faker on a team that's expected to win, and obviously he was fucking up a bunch of times in big games. Now, the part about that doesn't make any sense is, you were saying, Loco, about how Blank and Faker's synergy was just terrible. Like, they never were able to play around each other well. They were disconnected. Well, what people don't know is that Faker and Blank were like best fucking pals on that team and used to play all the time together. So actually, I personally suspect that means Faker was just telling Blank some of that shit. Like, right, now you go there, now you come in. Like, I would actually.
That's exactly what he did. That's
exactly
common knowledge that Faker would tell his jungler exactly what to do.
So that actually, in a way, I would agree with that. That impresses me, that if Clid can actually get Faker's ear in that sense, and actually he can be the one leading it, that's something we've never seen, in my opinion, in SK Telecom. That's a different SK Telecom.
And we've also seen that now that Faker has sort of applied his perfectionism to being a reactive player, some of his flanking plays, some of his, Lissandra play into the bot lane, things like that, where he's teamed up with Clid because Clid has said, Faker, come, and Faker has obeyed. That has been some of the cleanest and best advantage gathering in the LCK that we've seen, is basically just the combination of Clid and Faker destroying elsewhere on the map. And the thing that's really interesting is that throughout today, with your conversations with Kelsie and with Veteran, it's been all about having sort of 3-on-3s on the top side of the map, right? Mm-hmm. And diving into turrets in reference to the Shy and things like that. Whereas in the LCK, it's 4-man dives bot lane. And we know that the LPL is certainly no strangers to that either. But what SKT does is they accelerate 2-item 80 carries into a mid game that they can win. And that means that you nullify the issue of, oh, but this is such a fast meta. Oh, there's turret plates, there's rubber banding, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's got more money. There's more ability to snowball in the early game. Mm-hmm. That means that you can also snowball on the bottom side of the map, and you can get an Ezreal with Manamune Iceborne Gauntlet and throw him in the mid lane and no one can get past him, right? And then you can control the game after that, and SKT can still play around what has been the SKT suffocation control style League of Legends that's been there for 5-6 years. And I think that will work at MSI if they can get drafts that they can make work, right? And which is why I agree with you, Loco. I think that SKT will drop some early games, some games early in the tournament, mm-hmm. because they still need to shore up what's going to work for them in the current meta, even if they have been, smashing scrims back here in Korea.
They're just put in a different environment. I think scrimming LPL teams, that's great to know, and SKT has experience with that. And also at MSI, teams do scrim each other. You want to know what your competition is about. But there is still somewhat of an... SKT can be arrogant and they can believe in themselves too much, especially when it comes to someone like Faker. I do think he's going to force an Azir pick early in the tournament, and it's going to bite them in the ass.
Yep, we've seen Azir being a double-edged sword multiple times throughout, MSI even so far, throughout the play-ins and things like that. So,
anyway, a lot of that stuff was the digression from the G2 SK Telecom matchup. So,
right, yes.
Did you have any more in that as to why? Presumably, if you pick an SK Telecom to win, they beat G2 as well, right?
Yes, they do, and it's going to be around the jungle bot lane and being able to avoid allowing the solo lanes to snowball. And so that's going to be Clid playing either very aggressively bot side and forcing Jankos to come bot and answer that, and then allow for that 4v4 sort of 5v5 potential in the early game, and then being able to play around a super fed Teddy that they can throw into the mid lane, top lane, and just crush down turrets, right? They can play around that style, but it will require the draft being won by SKT in a lot of ways. And that's where the sort of plan falls down, because I have been super impressed with G2's draft, which is why in the early few games, it's going to take a lot of, the mad scientist Coma to adapt and figure things out and try and find a way through, which he has proven he can do multiple times in multiple world championships, MSIs in the past. And I have faith in Coma and the SKT support staff, because international tournament is a very different beast to playing in your own region. And I think that when you look at everything holistically, right, you've got, so far, we're going in with the knowledge of what LPL can do versus the LPL, what LCK can do versus the LCK, and what Europe can do against Europe. And G2 have proven that they are by far the best team in Europe. They've also proven that they can draft extremely well, because it doesn't matter what your opponent is if you've just made great decisions in the draft, right? So that we can also say they are very, very good at. But how the players stack up 1-to-1, we're all just speculating. You've been speculating for the last 3 hours, on whether this player is better than this player, because we have no fucking idea. No one knows. Is Wonder actually that good? Yeah, I mean, you can look back 6-7 months ago in a very different meta. Yes, he is that good. But is he that good now? Is Khan better than he used to be? Is now that his mental is not as boom anymore, is he actually a good player? We don't know all of these things, and I guess we can look at the Shy and his 1v1 outplays are just ridiculous, and you guys have had multiple rounds on how freaking good this guy is, and that is very, very true, right? The guy is ridiculously strong. But is he going to be able to be controlled better by a player from a different region than by the top laners that have been lording over this guy, just praise the god, the Shy, over and over again, and just getting smashed in lane? Is that going to happen again, or are we going to see different strategies emerge that can actually stop him from even being able to make that choice? These are the questions that we have to ask.
Well, I mean, obviously, let's go into IG SKT. How do you feel on that matchup? How does SKT win that one?
Well, I mean, that's the hardest one, right?
He alluded before you have to ban correctly. That was what he had.
Yeah.
And then, okay, what about this then? So, since you've said as a general trend for the tournament, being able to, as you said, accelerate the bot lane, get it onto 2 items, take it mid, wherever, make basically the fights that you want. Don't sit back and think, right, it's a 30-minute laning phase, they're going to get all the turret play. Basically what everyone thinks SK Telecom has to play into, right? How does that apply when they play IG? Is that going to work against IG? Can you accelerate the bot lane against them? I mean, their bot lane's known to play pretty aggro, even if they've got no jungle attention, right?
Yeah, I mean, their bot lane's really interesting, because I think it stacks up in a really interesting way to SKT's bottom lane. I think JackieLove and Teddy are similar players with their champion pool and how they like to pick champions in certain situations. They're both Draven players, they're both Kalista players, things like this. But I think that Teddy is just all around better at everything. He's a better laner. His teamfight positioning is the best in the world. That's almost something that every analyst can agree on. And Teddy doesn't play slow. He's not if you think about it, thinking back to, Samsung Blue days, where Deft was just extremely good at positioning in a team fight, and Deft actually, evolved and of course then became more of an all-round player. But I think that example is a good one, because I think a lot of people are putting SKT in this weird box of, they fall behind early and then they rely on Teddy's late game positioning. No, that's not how it works. They fall behind early because their solo lanes get pushed in, and they allow that pressure to build, and they take advantages bottom side of the map, right? So they generally have an advantage around Teddy in isolation in the 2v2 every single time. Even if the number at the top of the screen is reading that SKT are behind in gold, Teddy is almost every time ahead in gold, ahead in pressure. He's picked up turret plates, and they're about to take that turret and move the bottom lane into mid and around the map. And the games that SKT lose, which wasn't many this season, the games they lose is when that doesn't happen fast enough. And whether or not, teams like IG and G2 and the strong international showings can slow down Teddy's crushing of the bottom side of the map is the question for me. And can JackieLove and Perks put on enough pressure and control Teddy in lane like every LCK team failed to do?
Loco. Fact that... Yeah, sorry, keep going.
Oh, I was just gonna say that like, the fact that SKT so easily like just straight up smashed Kingzone, and they have arguably the best bottom lane in
Maybe
the
the world.
LCK. Yeah, possibly the world. Tucson and Deft are incredible, and Teddy and Marta just ran through them. Marta was like free to roam half the time. Like Teddy is like, I don't know, he's a different beast, and I think that there aren't 80 carries that any other regions had to deal with since the heyday of Uzi, and we saw that teams couldn't deal with that.
So Loco, if you look at the way he set his argument up there, basically, if you accept the premise that they can play through bot and that this will work and that, you know, they won't just lose top lane or Khan won't just feed the game away, if they live in that world, basically he has found one of the few angles you can come at where SK Telecom has a clear advantage, which is
bot lane.
Actually Teddy as AD carry has probably the biggest margin that he is better than every other AD carry in this tournament than any other position. Because the Shy's amazing. The fucking wonders right there. He's a very good player as well. Khan, if he's on the right picks and in the right matchup, can definitely be a very good player. Like, these players aren't automatically going to lose every time.
Poor
in
impact.
theory, Teddy should be the best AD carry. Like, I'm not exaggerating. I know people who watch LPL will fucking go mental at me, but I think Doublelift's the second best AD carry in this tournament. Like, I would put number one, absolutely, of course, Teddy. I think he's far and away the best. My question is whether he can get that point, but I think he's for sure the player with the best edge on that one. Because here's the thing, Loco. I know to you go, but JackieLove is so sick. JackieLove plays with two super strong solo laners who push the fucking lane 24/7.
He has the Ning effect. He has the Ning effect.
I'd love to live in that world where I can push up because there's nobody in my fucking lane. Everyone's in the top lane. That's the dream. If you like, that's like Forgiven's wet dream that he's been waiting like 4 years to have happen. So the problem with that is when people play Doublelift's the one getting focused. They know he's the fucking guy who's going to carry the game. So I think the whole JackieLove angle, people overhype him with. He is a very good player. Like outside of the context of MSI, where it's the best from each region, he's a good AD carry certainly. But I think you're hating if you just like, but Doublelift never made out of groups. Like, yeah, he didn't play on fucking IG, did he?
Wait.
You know what? Give Doublelift, Rocky, Ning, and the Shy, and let's see if Doublelift can make it to playoffs.
I have one extra point that actually proves what you're saying, Thorin, and that is Teddy looked like a god when he was on fucking Jin Air. How do you do that? Team was an actual on fire bin. Like, they were the worst, and Teddy still almost hard carries games by himself. In that 94-minute game, that wasn't because Faker got caught out. That was because somehow Teddy managed to 1v9 for 94 minutes. Like, I don't know how you managed to do that. And so being able to prove yourself on a shit team and then overperform on a good team, that just proves that you are actually just that good. Whereas JackieLove, I mean, there's a dive in game one in the final. It's one of my favorite things to watch ever, because IG are getting trashed in the laning phase against JDG. Somehow, you know, Imp can play League of Legends again, which I'm super excited about. That's a completely different point. They're like smashing that lane, and they're trying to go for a dive. And what JackieLove has that every other team almost doesn't have is literally like the strongest solo laners that just can come and smash them in the face if anyone oversteps ever. So JDG make the right call, right? They go for the dive because they have all of this pressure. They have a man advantage. I think they even had first roam from mid. But then, you know, the Shy's there and gets a triple kill under this turret because he's just better. Auto attack from Rise calculated after a flash. Like, these sort of things happen because the rest of the map can react to where they're weak and then not get punished because of the amount of obscene pressure that their solo lanes already have on the rest of the map. Like, this overflow can happen so incredibly easily if you're just ahead in these lanes, right? And so JDG, they got punished for pushing up super far, and I want to see whether IG can make that same play against SKT under that turret, because I just don't think that that is going to happen. I just don't think that the same mistake is going to be made as, you know, Imp's bottom lane versus Teddy's bottom lane. I just don't think that that's going to happen.
Like, Loco, here's something that's very telling that you probably missed, was you notice when we had Veteran on there, like, something you might not know about him is Veteran, cause he just loves EU and has never given a fuck about
really?
He's not one of those people that does this angle of like, the West, or you are the best Western player. He actually thinks you shouldn't do that, because since he thinks NA is trash, he thinks you should just say Europe. Like, why give NA some of the credit for, like, I agree with him. Why the fuck would NA get credit for Fnatic making the final words? What did NA do aside from just taking up the arse in the semi-final? That's it. Like, they didn't do anything else to help fucking Fnatic do it. So Europe did that, not
We
Fnatic,
killed Afrika for you. We made it easier for Europe. We killed Afrika.
Pretty sure Afrika committed a very, very long, slow fucking, like, collective euthanasia in that scenario, mate. Like, I think they just killed themselves on that game. But anyway, that was an argument that you lost with LS, so fans can go back to that one if they want to see that argument played out for 45 minutes while I'm muted. Anyway, the point I was going to make was this. If you notice, Veteran never flamed Doublelift, mate. He even said Doublelift's a very good player, and actually he's one of the better players. That's because, even though Veteran is biased against NA, he actually acknowledges that Doublelift's a fucking sick player, mate. And so you might look down your nose like, that absolute garbage video you made. I've already wrecked you on it before, where you tried to make out like Doublelift's not even that fucking talented mechanically at the game. Like, the one angle, like, of all the hills to die on,
I did it. Oh my god,
Doublelift's not really that mechanically talented at League of Legends. That's your fucking angle.
That was not my angle.
What's your next fucking
my
thing?
angle was,
you know that meme where Steven Crowder has that thing like, changed my mind? Loco's going for the fucking, like, swimming uphill approach. Like, he's got, like, Doublelift isn't that good mechanically. Changed my mind. Next, what next? Trump doesn't even say crazy tweets. Changed my mind. Like, you're just going for all the hard fights, aren't you? You don't like any fucking easy wins, do you, Lord? So anyway, go on. Yeah, I'm just setting this up. Give me your reason where you shit on Doublelift. Explain why JackieLove or Perks is better than. Come on, Doublelift.
No, what is it? I think JackieLove's second best and Doublelift is third and Perks is fourth. I think it's...
On what basis?
Okay, so the point you made about Doublelift and the point you made about JackieLove, where JackieLove has Ning, he has Rookie, he has the Shy, like, people are pushing out, like, giving him pressure, and he doesn't need to play the entire game, basically. He doesn't need to play to carry the entire game, basically. But for Doublelift, he needs to play to carry the entire game because he is very team fight based. Team Liquid overall is very team fight based and very bot lane based. Almost all Doublelift teams are that way because he demands that of his team and he wants the ball and he wants to play that way. So I don't think it's JackieLove randomly ended up on IG where there's carries in other lanes, or Doublelift randomly ended up on Team Liquid where he is the only true carry and the game revolves around him. He wants the game to be practiced that way, for scrims to go that way, and he directed the team into that position.
Oh, he's aware that the rest of NA is garbage, and he therefore doesn't go, you know what, actually, let's just use Loco's global meta and put all the picks in the top lane, and I'll just sit here farming. Like, yeah, he is aware you won't win the game that way. I don't know why that's his fault.
He forced the teams that way.
That's an accurate assessment of his own world that he lives in.
He forced his teams to be that way, and that is kind of the bet he's going to have to, like, lie on. So I don't think... I think it's ludicrous to put Double over JackieLove. Like, JackieLove is a fucking world champion. Like, JackieLove plays in LPL. Like,
nah, JackieLove isn't a world champion. He just actually had the VIP seat to watch some people who are the world champions. Exactly. He had the fucking full fan experience, mate. Yeah, he was just basically exactly like the reason why.
To me, Korea's still won because the Shy and Rookie won that final.
Exactly.
So
I made that point as soon as they won. Exactly. I was like, I don't know how people are downplaying Korea. Are you ever aware who won this final?
50% of that team was literally Korean. Because Duke's also Korean and there's 6 men on the squad. So, to me, I'll take half the win.
Here's the thing, Loco. Yes, in terms of being pedantic, JackieLove is technically a world champion. But the point is, the way you used it there is bullshit. Because you tried to bill it like, how Doublelift isn't as good as JackieLove. He's not a world champion. Yeah, you know who else was a world champion? Think of all the
Looper, you're going to mention Looper.
What? A million of them. Looper, Pawn... The fucking list goes
okay, so
on.
wait.
These people are better than people who didn't win the World Championship. I don't think so, somehow.
I will mention, I
don't think it took Rookie until last year's Worlds to become better than Pawn.
I will admit, what is it, Doublelift has had a better Worlds and a better MSI than he normally has had due to his international performance being really shit. His 2018 was his best international performance, even if he didn't make it out of group. JackieLove has consistently performed well at International. I know we're going to give so much credit to the Shy. I know we're going to give so much credit to the Rookie. But in KT series, JackieLove played damn well. And him popping off on Xayah in those team fights was crucial to them winning. I don't think it's fair to just rate Doublelift over JackieLove. Like, when
JackieLove was actually an unexpected metric in that particular best of 5. And I think that's why KT actually lost, is because JackieLove just had a really, really good day. He had a really good day. And because that's what you draft around, right? You draft around JackieLove not being as good as Deft and Marta, which certainly makes some sense. Going into that World Championship, I thought Deft was almost the best player in the world. He was ridiculously good. But as Korea did, we choked. that's what happened, and didn't actually get proven. But the fact that the KT read was that JackieLove was the weak link, that's not because they just decided to, wave a magic wand to be like, oh, that's going to be the weak link that we're going to go through. It's because they did the research. They looked at this player and said, we can punish this. We can go through here. And I don't need to prove anything because they've got some damn good analysts. There's a reason why they're paid so much. And that's the read that they made. That's the read that a lot of the LPL teams make as well, to try and take down IG. So I think that, yes, the rest of the solo lanes are ridiculously strong, and you could understand why JackieLove is overlooked on that basis as well. But I also think that JackieLove benefits from that more than any other player, and still can find himself in situations where he can be abused and capitalized on for it. And the fact that that can happen when he already has such an innate advantage over every other AD carry that's almost ever played, like the Shy and Rookie, have we seen talent like that together ever? I mean, Maren and Faker is the last time that I've thought about it. And I mean, no one beat that team, so it barely even matters, right? So I think that JackieLove, yes, it's unfair just to say he's bad, and we're not saying that he's bad, but I don't think that you can say that he's really strong or super good, because it's like when everyone's talking about, on a winning team, all of the players on that team are good.
Yes.
Like it's just a silly way to argue anything, because you have to look at individually how they're playing in an environment where they're set up to win, because there are certain pillars that
the ultimate example was in your league, mate. Just go back to Griffin about 5 weeks into LCK, and everyone on any talk show in the world would have said, these are 3 or 4 of the best players in
the best top laner in the world.
Everything they're doing is brilliant, they're unbeatable, you can't find a way in. And at the time it looked like that. That's not even that's the stupidest analysis ever. At the time it looked like that on the screen, because you didn't see any of the flaws of the players.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
winning is the best Band-Aid. Winning is the best Band-Aid. Just keep doing that, and then no one's ever going to question you.
The point is, Loco, you're not even watching the bottom half of the fucking screen when IG plays. You barely even see the bot lane.
That's the thing, though. JackieLove
could literally die 8 times in a game and win the game. I'd love to have that world. And I'm sure fucking Double A, Forgiven, all the other players who have to hard carry Uzi, they'd love to be in that world. No one is.
There's times where top lane has made enough mistakes, or mid lane made enough mistakes, where JackieLove has to be a consistent basis for IG to come back off of. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen time to time. I don't get why he's getting shit on so much and not receiving any of the credit.
Oh, we're not shitting on him. We're just saying that he is not as far as this tournament is concerned, other teams have had to rely on their AD carry more than IG have, to the point where you can argue that Doublelift is a better player than JackieLove. That's our point. That's all we're saying.
Anyway, I just knew that I'd beat you, Loco, so successful. There's a solid 20 minutes.
You're a great co-host, Doran.
What about this then? So, since Atlas, people have tried. The problem with this tournament is it's very easy to draw a narrative comparison between G2 and IG, and then Team Liquid and SK Telecom. In fact, even Cloud Templar himself did it. So, along that vein, what do you think happens when SK Telecom plays Team Liquid?
Oh God. I think that SKT can almost do whatever they want and still win. Because I just think that their lanes are just better. And it's because Team Liquid's card, the ace up their sleeve, is Doublelift, and he's against Teddy.
Yeah.
Sorry. I guess you just have to go home. I just don't see a way through. And our conversation before wasn't about Teddy versus Doublelift. Our conversation before was about JackieLove versus Doublelift. Yes. And I think that Doublelift is a fantastic player. I just think it's really unfortunate that the best player, in my opinion, in the tournament, Teddy, is in the lane against him. And so Doublelift isn't going to be able to make those plays. And we even saw in the Fongru Buffalo series, he was making fumbles against that bottom lane. And Big Koro is a fantastic player. I've actually rated him for years. I think he's very, very good. But he's not Teddy, right? And that lane was still doing well against Team Liquid in a lot of situations. They lost early games that I wasn't expecting them to lose. I thought, Team Liquid was going to come through a lot easier than that. And yes, it was a 3-0, but it wasn't the 3-0 that we should have expected, right?
This is why, Loco, I told you on the past episode, the real downside for Team Liquid is they are a good team. And in the current world, it's not like it's as one-sided as it was now where Korea just wins everything. In theory, the best team from each region should have some sort of a chance to win. The problem they have is the wrong teams won all the other finals. Like if fucking Jingdong Gaming wins that final, they could absolutely be better than the fucking Imp Lamau bot lane. So they were actually much better in the playoffs than they should have been, but they could be better than them. Obviously, like Lehens by the end of the split was having some problems with his champion pool. Looked like he went from
end of the split. He was missing flash cocoons on his damn support Elise at the beginning of the split. It just didn't matter.
If you send Origin, I already told the fucking coach of Origin to his face before he won that bullshit award that Doublelift's fucking Team Liquid's bot lane and get in that ass. They know. So it's just unfortunate for them. Sometimes, this is a real factor in esports games. It's sometimes not even about what you do. It's about where do you meet someone in the bracket? Who is the opponent that you face at this tournament? Like, the scenarios, this is the reason why predicting the winner of a tournament is actually a fool's errand. You only do it for fans, really. Because like we said on the discussion we had earlier, right, where we made Veteran do his top 4. Well, for all he knows, like the upsets in the best of 1 part means that IG comes 3rd and then they play someone who's really good 2nd, and so the second best team can't make the final now. That can happen. And so you look like an idiot for saying, well, I thought they'd come 2nd, but like you didn't know what bracket it'd be. So I'm just saying that as an aside. Like, it's the reason why you can never be too firm on predictions. It's better to give you reasons and then just go for fun with the actual pick at that. So do you have anything left for the Atlas before we wrap this up, mate?
Atlas, how do you think NA should, like NA fan base and NA, I guess, how should NA look at MSI and what
NA... expectations are realistic? What's like for example, what would be a way to get hyped? What would be something to give them like a little bit of a sweat? What matchup should they look for, or what player aspect? What can get them excited?
They can beat Fong for Buffalo. That's a guarantee. We've already had that one proven, so you got that one in the bag. I think that Flash Wolves are not, they're a shadow of the team that they used to be, so that's one that they can also take down, even though I actually rate their bottom lane pretty high. They surprised me, man. Like, I wasn't expecting Flash Wolves to look as good as they did. Vega Squadron took that first game, and then Flash Wolves woke up and put them in the ground. Like, it was an incredible turnaround performance. And I think, it's a problem that we're going into best of 1s, but that's a different discussion completely, because that best of 5 was more dominant than what Team Liquid did, which is like a 3-0. It's just a weird thing to say, right? It's a 3-1, but it was more convincing. So I think that's actually going to be a fun matchup. I think G2 and IG versus SKT and Liquid, like if you think of Liquid being like baby SKT, I think that either makes it better or worse. Because I think that if you have strengths in the same areas against a team, it's way harder to make a plan
beat the one that's better than you,
right? Yeah. Because how do you beat like a cookie cutter that's just a better version of your cookie cutter, right? Like, it's not gonna
you'd rather have the mismatch on one part and you have a mismatch on the other part of the map. Like I was saying with the Jingdong example,
Exactly right. And then it's about like trying to nullify and things like that. So I think that if you're going to break in as a Team Liquid fan into the top 3, almost agreed on by everyone, teams at MSI this year, I think it's probably through G2 that you're going to be able to do it, because I don't think that the control that you can get by having a jungle matchup that can be okay, and I rate Xsmithy as well. I think he's a great player, but I don't think that they're going to be able to control the Cheyenne rookie in any way near like you could potentially try to control Caps and Wonder. So I think G2 is their way through, as long as Doublelift can keep playing consistently. And I know that, Perks has been throwing out his highlight videos all over his Korean boot camp and stuff like that. And some of those plays have been pretty impressive as well. So I don't know whether we can necessarily, throw Perks in the bin as far as the bottom lane, apart from what I did with Teddy. But I think that's been proven. So it's going to be really, really hard for Team Liquid to make it past any teams other than Flash Wolves and Fongbu Buffalo. I just don't think I think there's a clear distinction between top 3 and bottom 3.
Hey, Loco, I'll give you a reason to be hyped about Team Liquid in this tournament.
God, it's going to be a backhanded compliment.
No, it's actually a totally legit reason. And in fact, it even works analytically.
Sure.
And this is the reason why. Since the first portion of the tournament is best of 1 round robin and you play everyone, right? It's already taken for granted that all the top teams, including Team Liquid, will beat Fongbu Buffalo and very likely Flash Wolves.
They only have to beat one team.
They will pretty much all beat those 2 teams, right? So first of all, you're already probably in the playoffs if you're Team Liquid. But if you want a reason to be hyped, here's the reason why. Is because it's not certain who wins when G2 and IG play and when IG and SK Telecom play for some people. As a result, the actual chances that one team just wins every game in the group, I think it's very, very low. I don't think IG is just going to beat everyone and go fucking.
I don't think there's clear favorites.
8-0 or whatever it would be. So as a result, the premium on getting even one best of one fluke upset could be huge. Like if Team Liquid just gets a fluke win against G2, or God forbid SK Telecom, that alone can put them third, and then they play the second, which is the easier match. Like that's the way to get hyped, is that they don't need to beat all these teams. They don't even need to win the best of 5, but they can just make it a more exciting, because they can have a best of 1, of course. If you know League of Legends, anyone can actually win a best. Not really, but like the amount of permutations possible are incredible. So even though it's not likely, it's actually way more exciting. Whereas in the past, if you'd won that best of 1, you still finish 4th anyway. It wouldn't matter. There'd be no hype whatsoever. So there's the only angle. I had to sort of go outside the game for a second, but it does work if you think it through.
I feel like you've just defined what a dark horse is.
In a way, yeah.
That's just
they are a horse.
Does make sense. They just need to work. Like maybe a navy. Maybe we change the logo, get a bit of navy in there, and then we've got a little bit more of a chance. I don't know.
Oh, the other angle as well, if you want a real in-game based one, the obvious angle is if Jensen just gets unleashed for some reason, because the Jensen who played in Spring Split, he was fairly like reserved. He was way more like fucking defensive a player than I've ever seen in the past. He actually played like in line with what you said, Loco. He played as if he was just upgraded Poor Belter. He didn't play like Jensen on Cloud9. So if that guy turns up, the guy I've seen at Worlds, and has a pop-off game, there's a best of 1 win. Why is that impossible? Like everyone's making. One of the weirdest things is everyone's making out like certain matchups are like 100%. Like, I know everyone loves Caps. I love Caps as well. I think he's probably the best mid laner. Absolutely, Jensen could do well in a best of 1 against Caps in the mid lane. Like, it's not that big a disparity. It's just that one guy hasn't really shown us that aspect. So he probably won't. I agree, Loco. I would say personally, SK Telecom probably won't play super good early game. Jensen probably won't do any of this shit. But it's absolutely within his wheelhouse for 1 game. That's all you need, 1 game.
I actually think that the mid lane's really exciting this tournament. And I don't think about it in the same way as like, this is the lane to watch, because for me, like the best players at the tournament, I don't think a mid lane.
Everyone has a competent
there
mid
until number 3. That's the thing, right? Yeah. So you've got like for the top 4 regions, you've got Jensen, Caps, Rookie, and Faker. Like, holy shit, that's a smorgasbord of just some of the best ever, right? So this is going to be a really fun tournament when it comes to the mid lane. And the mid 2v2 is going to be really fun to track. Even if you've got the Shy popping off and Teddy destroying bottom lanes, it doesn't matter in isolation of that mid lane. And I think that's where Jensen can definitely pop off if we see some old flavors of Jensen and not this new, I need to play defensively and I just need to try and help double lift carry, because I just don't think that's how you're going to win against G2 and IG.
So basically, Loco, this tournament is just Korean mid laners against European mid laners, and you all know I love that matchup. Tale as old as time. And by the way, before anyone starts memeing, because it's easy to meme on NA, like, oh, all the good players are for me, you. Before you try and be like, yeah, but the good Chinese one, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you this, Loco. I know you don't know this, but the player Knight for TOP, who was Chinese, is better than most Koreans, and I'd say most people in the entire world. That guy's unbelievably good. So I actually almost wish his team could have made it, because I think it would have been a sick one. But whatever. We've got IG. They are the better team, so fair enough. Is there any final remarks, Loco, before we wrap this one up, mate?
No, I mean, I had fun. Definitely different levels of guests. Some guests were very hostile. Some guests were very nice.
Kelsie was like the bottom of the bread, you know. She's just there to be sturdy, to provide substance. There's a lot of like, you know, nutrients in there that your young growing boy like you needs, so you can get fucking fashion sense. Obviously, Veteran was the spicy pastrami that you lay across it with a little bit of mustard in there, you know, and some sort of vegetable that you don't really like, but you know you should eat it for your diet, again, for the vitamins.
And you were the tomato because you're a vegetable?
That you definitely need, so you don't look like an emaciated fucking Kate Moss on heroin. You're Kate Moss on heroin if she really got a bad eating problem. So anyway, and then obviously the top, which is to make it look good on the thing. Atlas came in, he was looking smooth. He's actually had a haircut in the past that was like a loaf of bread, and he actually added in though. The mustard was there was a bit of mustard on the top of his side as well. We put that all together. Nice sandwich there. Nice sandwich. I would eat, obviously. You would look at and go, I'll just have a salad, please. I would eat the sandwich, obviously.
Okay. No, I would just have a Soylent.
It was a good sandwich. It was a good sandwich.
What are you in the sandwich, Doran? Why don't you?
I'd figure you'd be a bigger fan of sandwiches, Loco, because you were always trying to be a hero. And as Shaq's famous quote goes, you didn't know that ain't nothing but a sandwich, son.
All right. Well, Atlas,
American jokes. I even know your fucking references, mate. Anyway, that's the end
I
of the
didn't get that
episode.
one.
Atlas, thank you so much for being on the show.